At the grand edifice of the Hunter Association, amidst the blinding flashes of cameras, a formal announcement echoed through the hall. A new generation of trainees was graduating, and one name was called to the stage, Kim Han-ul. With measured, determined steps, he walked forward, each footfall a testament to the long and arduous journey that had brought him to this very moment. An official with a stern but respectful demeanor congratulated him on completing the rigorous training in the Hunter's Denver. He presented a small card, an object that held the weight of all his aspirations, an E-rank Hunter license. Han-ul accepted it with a crisp salute, a wave of profound emotion washing over him. This was it, the culmination of every drop of sweat, every moment of pain. He was finally an official Hunter. His mind raced, recalling the endless nights spent studying. To overcome his inherent weaknesses, he had to work twice as hard as anyone else, memorizing every detail about dungeons and monsters until he was second to none in knowledge. A surge of pride swelled in his chest. He believed his relentless effort had finally paid off. He was no longer a trainee, but a real, true hunter. But as he stood tall, the official's next words shattered his triumph. "Trainee, I think you're misunderstanding something." The man's tone was cold, clinical, as he tore through Han-ul's dream. An E-rank hunter may receive a license, but they could never work as a full-fledged hunter. The words struck Han-ul with the force of a physical blow, his mind struggling to process the brutal reality. The official's explanation was a cascade of harsh truths, each one dismantling Han-ul's hope. He explained that no amount of strategy or tactics could ever compensate for the abysmal combat stats of an E-rank. With his power level, he would be utterly useless against even the weakest of monsters, a liability rather than an asset. The final, crushing piece of advice was delivered with chilling finality. In this world, you don't fight monsters with sheer will. You fight monsters with monsters. That single statement defined his failure. And so, on that day, 7 years ago, Kim Han-ul's dream died, and he gave up on ever becoming a hunter. In the present, Han-ul slouched in his gaming chair, the blue light of his monitor illuminating a face etched with frustration. A notification on his screen confirmed his latest misfortune. The game he had dedicated his life to was shutting down. He sighed, the weight of another failure pressing down on him. How was he supposed to make a living now? He remembered how, after abandoning his hunter aspirations, he had found a new purpose in a game aptly named Fight Monsters with Monsters. It was a defense-style game where players hired a diverse roster of creatures and strategically placed them to fend off relentless waves of enemy monsters. It was a world he could control, a battle he could win. The game was far from simple, demanding deep tactical understanding of monster affinities, combinations, and timing. It was made even more punishing by a roguelike system, where a single defeat meant losing all progress. This, combined with abysmally low odds for upgrading units, made it notoriously difficult. It was for these reasons that most players had branded it a trash game. The game balance was so skewed that a powerful 3-star ogre could often be defeated by a lowly 1-star goblin. Han-ul stretched, sighing with a mix of frustration and fondness. The developer, he mused, had to be some kind of masochist. But for all its insane difficulty and infuriating design, this game had become his lifeline. He made a living streaming his gameplay, and his deep knowledge had made him a true veteran of the despised title. Now, with the servers shutting down, that lifeline was being cut, leaving him to wonder what he was supposed to do now. As he wallowed in despair, notifications chimed from his live chat. His dedicated viewers, his community, were already there for the final stream. Putting on a brave face, he sat up and greeted them, pushing his own anxieties aside for the sake of his audience. The chat was lively, with some fans teasing him about his hunter license, joking that he wouldn't starve. The comment, meant in jest, stung more than they could know. He stayed quiet for a moment, the casual remark a painful reminder of the life he couldn't have. He forced a pained smile, carefully constructing a vague response about considering his hunter options. The truth was a secret he guarded closely. He could never reveal to them that he was a washed-up E-rank, too weak to even step foot in a real dungeon. Steeling his resolve, he decided to give them a finale they would never forget. He declared his intention to attempt that thing, a phrase his veteran viewers immediately understood. The chat erupted in a frenzy of excitement and pledges of support. This was the game's ultimate challenge, to defend the castle from an endless torrent of monsters pouring from a cataclysmic gate. With his audience hyped, he dove straight into the challenge, his fingers dancing across the keyboard and mouse. His goal was not just to survive, but to conquer the 700th wave, a level considered unexplored territory that no player had ever reached. This would be his last, and hopefully greatest, achievement in this world. He bantered with the chat, reminding them of the vast resources it took to build his army, only for them to fire back that it was their donations that funded it all. He chuckled, knowing that even if he succeeded, the record would vanish when the game ended. Yet, with a sense of purpose, he clicked start. He took a deep, calming breath, his hand steady on the mouse despite the nervous energy coursing through him. This was the end of an era for him, a final performance. With a decisive click, the battle began, and the screen flashed with 2 words, 700th wave start. The onslaught was immediate and overwhelming. A tidal wave of high-level monsters, from hulking beasts to swarms of dragons, erupted onto the field. The sheer number and power were unlike anything he had ever faced. He stared, wide-eyed, shocked that the game would throw such an impossible force at him from the very beginning. Snapping out of his stupor, his veteran instincts took over. His hands became a blur as he executed his opening strategy, beginning with some tactical zoning. He summoned a prized goblin archer, which knocked a flaming arrow and let loose a piercing shot to thin the approaching ranks. The goblin's arrow found its mark, but the victory was short-lived. An enemy projectile streaked across the battlefield, striking the archer down. A notification confirmed the kill. Hanol gritted his teeth in frustration. He had just lost an expensive, high-level unit in the first few seconds of the battle. The monstrous tide surged forward, undeterred. He knew he was in serious trouble if they broke through his initial defenses. In a calculated risk, he decided to play one of his strongest cards, the level 130 Succubus Queen, deploying her to hold the line at the main entrance. The Succubus Queen materialized, ready for battle, but a monstrous 3-headed Cerberus had already bypassed his defenses and lunged at her. Hanol watched in horror. He had miscalculated. The enemy was faster and more cunning than he'd anticipated. He frantically tried to command her to pull back and regroup. But it was too late. The Cerberus's jaws clamped down, and the Succubus Queen was instantly destroyed. The notifications of his losses began to cascade, a digital funeral pyre for his carefully cultivated army. Another elite unit, a level 2 51-eyed bullseye, was also reported as destroyed. He watched, his expression a mixture of disbelief and despair, as his most powerful units were systematically annihilated. The monsters he had poured countless hours and his viewers' money into were being erased in mere moments. The 700th wave was not a challenge, it was a slaughter. A massive explosion rocked the screen, signaling the fall of his remaining defenders. It was over. He had no units left, no defensive buildings to block the path. All that remained between the horde and defeat was the castle itself, standing silent and vulnerable. The monsters stormed the castle, their path leading directly to the throne room where the final objective lay. As they closed in, the camera panned to the throne, revealing a lone, elegant figure in black and gold armor, sitting motionless. As defeat seemed certain, Hanol could only wonder, is this really how it ends? Then, the unexpected happened. A blue system message box appeared, something he'd never encountered before. It acknowledged him as the very first player to challenge the 700th wave. And because of this unprecedented feat, a special event was triggered. The Lord would awaken. On the screen, the figure on the throne finally moved. An elderly attendant presented her with a magnificent sword. She rose to her feet, her silver hair flowing as she drew the blade, which erupted in a blinding, sacred light. She was no longer a set piece, she was a warrior. Hanol stared, utterly baffled. The Lord awakened? He had always assumed she was just a decorative, non-playable character. He watched, stunned, as this single, mysterious warrior turned to face the entire monster horde alone at the top of the grand staircase. He had experienced game overs hundreds, if not thousands, of times. He knew every mechanic, every glitch, every secret the game held, or so he thought. Nothing like this had ever happened before. This was not in any guide. It was completely new territory. The Lord's eyes flashed a brilliant, crimson red. In an instant, she became a phantom, a blur of motion and light. Her blade sang through the air, carving through the dense pack of monsters with impossible speed. Hanol's jaw dropped. It was unbelievable. Was she taking out the entire front line in a single hit? He tried to shout a warning, a reflexive attempt to control the uncontrollable. Wait a second. If you charge in there, it's dangerous. But the Lord was beyond his command. She leaped fearlessly into the heart of the enemy ranks, a whirlwind of righteous fury. The throne room became a canvas of glorious destruction. The Lord moved like a dancer in a storm, each elegant movement a fatal blow. Her glowing blade left trails of golden light as she systematically dismantled the horde that had so easily crushed his own formidable army. The kill feed struggled to keep up. Merman Warrior has been destroyed. Lizardman Hero has been destroyed. Viper has been destroyed. The list scrolled on and on, a testament to the Lord's overwhelming power as she single-handedly turned the tide of the hopeless battle. She fought with a relentless grace, her power absolute. More notifications flooded the screen. Cyclops, Minotaurs, Drakes, all fell before her might. The unstoppable 700th wave was being reduced to nothing by a character he never even knew was playable. Hanol could only stammer, "No way. What did I just see?" After the last monster fell, the Lord paused, catching her breath. She then plunged her sword into the ground, unleashing one final, massive burst of cleansing energy that vaporized the remaining dark presence. The energy wave expanded, wiping the slate clean. Red drakes and sea dragons were annihilated in an instant. Hanol's mind was completely blown. The Lord had taken them all down alone. It was a feat that should have been impossible. As the light faded, the Lord stood alone amidst the carnage, her back to the camera. A new message filled the screen, this one glowing with triumph. "Congratulations! You have cleared the 700th wave." He had done it. Or rather, she had done it. Overcome with excitement, Hanol turned to his monitors, eager to share the incredible moment with his viewers. "Guys, did you see the Lord?" he shouted. But there was no response. The chat was empty, his screen frozen. He tried to move his mouse, but it was unresponsive. Suddenly, a single chat notification appeared. It was from Viewer 1, an account that had been dormant for 5 years. The message was bizarre. It thanked Hanol, stating that because of him, their liege has awakened from his long slumber. Hanol stared, completely confused by the cryptic words. Viewer 1 continued, "Speaking of being given a chance to start anew, together with you." An image of 2 pixelated figures bowing appeared on his screen before Viewer 1 left the chat. Hanol was left alone, utterly baffled by the strange encounter. It seemed no one else had witnessed his historic achievement. He slumped in his chair, lamenting his terrible luck. The most incredible gaming moment of his life, and his stream had crashed. As he prepared to sign off for the last time, a blinding blue light suddenly erupted from his monitor, surging towards him and engulfing him completely. The force of the energy blasted through him from his chair. As his vision cleared, he was no longer in his room, but somewhere else, facing a massive holographic system interface. Words materialized before him. Synchronization with a separate power completed. "You have acquired a new skill." A new skill? The words sent a jolt through his very soul. He looked down at his hands, trembling. Could this mean a reawakening? The memory of the Hunter Association officials' dismissive words resurfaced, the declaration that an E rank was a dead end. He recalled a conversation with a doctor years ago, a sliver of hope he had long since forgotten. The doctor had mentioned that, in rare cases, a hunter could awaken an extra skill, allowing them to break their limits and raise their rank. It was a phenomenon known as a reawakening. A slow, genuine smile finally broke through his confusion. He didn't understand the how or the why, but he understood the result. For a man who had been told he was worthless, who had been looked down on his entire life, a new chance had finally arrived. He leaned into his microphone, his voice filled with a newfound power, and declared, "Everyone, with today's stream as my last, I'll be returning as a hunter." The morning sun cast a brilliant light over his home, a stark contrast to the storm of confusion and hope brewing within Kim Han-oh. He sat on the edge of his bed, the afterglow of his declaration still ringing in his ears. It was true, he had reawakened, but the path forward was shrouded in mystery. This was more than just a second chance. It was a complete rewriting of his destiny. He pulled up his status window, his heart pounding in anticipation of the monumental power he must have gained. But as his eyes scanned the familiar, disappointingly low numbers, his excitement curdled into disbelief. Strength, 10. Agility, 6. None of his stats had changed. This wasn't the explosive growth he had read about. This was nothing. Just as despair began to set in, a new notification chimed, illuminating his dark room. It was a prompt from the system, asking if he wanted to check the information on his new skill. A jolt went through him. That's right, he hadn't just reawakened, he had gained A. The stats didn't matter if the ability itself was powerful enough. A wide, almost manic grin spread across his face. Who cared if his stats were still at rock bottom? In the world of hunters, a single high-rank skill could be worth more than a dozen points in strength or agility. Without a moment's hesitation, his fingers shot out, pressing accept with all the hope of a man reborn. The screen updated, revealing the names of his new abilities. Deal with the Lord and Audience with the Lord. He stared, utterly baffled. He had never heard of skills with such strange, almost theological names. Deciding that action was better than speculation, he resolved to test the one that was currently active. He selected the skill, his mind buzzing with possibilities. A blue light confirmed the activation, but it was immediately replaced by a blaring, red error message. Notice, not enough gold. The skill could not be activated. His new power, his one hope, was locked behind a paywall he didn't understand. His jaw went slack. The whiplash from elation to crushing disappointment was staggering. He collapsed onto his bed, shouting his frustration into the empty room. To finally be given a path out of his miserable life, only to find the door bolted shut, was a cruelty he couldn't bear. As his frustration simmered, a thought began to form. This was no ordinary hunter skill, and he couldn't just ask the association about it. His mind drifted back to his final stream, to the strange viewer who seemed to know so much. A flicker of intuition told him that if anyone had answers, it was that person. He remembered the strange sense of unease he felt during that stream, the feeling that he was talking to something more. With a surge of desperate resolve, he sat at his desk and started a new broadcast, his thoughts a prayer. "Please log in." And as if answering his call, the notification appeared. Viewer 1 had joined. A relieved smile touched his lips. He had come, just as Han-oh hoped. Wasting no time, he locked the stream, creating a private channel. There was something he had to ask, and he couldn't risk any interruptions. As the viewer agreed to speak, the timeline clicked perfectly into place in Han-oh's mind. The skill had appeared immediately after their last conversation. It was too much to be a coincidence. This mysterious viewer, he realized with dawning certainty, was directly connected to his reawakening. He took a deep breath, steadying his nerves before typing his question. He had to be direct. "This might sound strange," he began, but he had suddenly reawakened yesterday. Then, staring intently at the screen, he posed the critical question, "Viewer 1, do you know anything about reawakenings?" He knew it. The viewer's response, though not yet visible, was palpable. They knew something. Han-oh's mind raced, connecting impossible dots. Awakenings were a force of nature, beyond human influence. If this viewer could trigger one, they had to be something else entirely, someone related to a throne. The implications were terrifying and profound. If this being had orchestrated his reawakening, then the most important question was, why? Out of all the hunters in the world, why choose him? Why show favor to a powerless, forgotten earrank. He ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of what was happening. He wasn't sure if he should be relieved or terrified that this entity knew his secret. Voicing his bewilderment, he asked why this was happening to him, unable to see any reason for such an extraordinary favor. The answer echoed not through the chat, but through his very soul, a vision of cosmic grandeur filling his sight. It was because their liege had chosen him. More than that, it was because of his actions, that their liege was able to awaken at all. Awakened because of him? The concept was too massive to grasp. He remembered another message from the viewer, one from long ago, speaking of their liege awakening from a long slumber. He had dismissed it as roleplay, but now he understood it was a literal, world-altering truth. A strange energy coursed through him as the mysterious robed figure from the chat spoke again, its voice calm and ancient. It told him not to be confused, that understanding would come in time. For now, he was simply to consider this new skill a token of their liege's immense gratitude. Hanol decided to accept the grand, cosmic explanation for the moment and focus on the practical. If these skills were a gift, he needed to know how to use them. He pressed the viewer, asking why he couldn't use the deal skill, mentioning the strange, insufficient gold error. The robed figure seemed to pause, a silent question mark hanging in the cosmic void. Gold. After a moment, it produced a glowing tome, its pages turning silently. After a brief, almost embarrassed-sounding hum, the entity admitted there appeared to have been some kind of mix-up. With a flick of its wrist, the entity declared that the error would be corrected. 50 gold would be sent to him shortly, enough to activate the skill. It advised him that the details of the ability would become clear once he used it himself. With a final declaration that they would be in his care, the entity vanished in a blinding flash of light, ending the stream. Hanol sat in the sudden silence, his room feeling impossibly normal. He pinched his cheek hard, just to be sure. This wasn't a dream, was it? He leaned back in his chair, trying to piece together the unbelievable events. So that viewer was truly involved in his reawakening. The liege they served had to be a throne, one of the godlike beings of legend. He felt completely lost, adrift in a new reality he couldn't comprehend. A sudden chime broke his reverie. A system window popped up, plain and simple. 50 gold has been deposited. A second later, another appeared. Deal with the Lord's skill has been activated. It was real. The time for questions was over. The time for answers had begun. His eyes widened in shock as a new interface materialized before him. List of monsters available for deals. It was a shop, a catalog of creatures he could seemingly purchase. He stared at the list, a powerful sense of déjà vu washing over him. It was exactly the same as the higher window in Fightmon. The layout, the icons, the names of the monsters. Goblins, wolves, orcs. Everything was identical to the game he had spent years mastering. The line between game and reality had just been completely erased. His mind reeled with the implications. In the game, monsters hired from this window could be summoned to his castle as troops. If this skill truly mirrored the game, did that mean he could summon them into the real world? Instead of fighting with his own meager power, he could have an army to fight for him. He scrolled through the list, his options severely limited by his starting funds. With only 50 gold, there was only one choice available at the very bottom of the ladder: a goblin slave. As his eyes scanned the full list, they suddenly locked on a name that made his breath catch in his throat: the Dream Lord. It was the ultimate, god-tier character from Fightmon, a being who could wipe out entire armies with a single thought, the one he had seen in the audience chamber. He laughed weakly at the absurd cost and affection requirement. Hiring the Lord was a distant dream, but the more pressing issue remained. If his new life depended on this skill, and this skill depended on gold, how was he supposed to earn it? He closed his eyes, focusing his thoughts and dredging up his vast knowledge of Fightman's mechanics. There were only two methods to obtain gold in the game. You either received it as a reward for clearing dungeons, or you hunted monsters and sold the materials they dropped. The conclusion was as simple as it was terrifying. If the system was the same, then the method of earning currency must be as well. To gain gold, He would have to step back into the world he'd just left. He would have to hunt real monsters. But a cold dose of reality quickly tempered his excitement. His stats were still those of a bottom-tier rank. He could barely take down the weakest of creatures on his own. In this new, dangerous game, the Goblin Slave was his only hope, his only starting piece on the board. With a newfound determination, Hanol's finger pressed the confirmation button. A message appeared, informing him the Goblin Slave had been hired and could be resummoned at no cost. Immediately, a swirling vortex of crackling blue energy began to form in the center of his room. This was actually happening. A real summoning was taking place. Yet, as the energy intensified, a bead of sweat rolled down his temple. The aura was immense, overwhelming, far too powerful for what should be the weakest monster in the game. His eyes widened in shock, a gasp catching in his throat. As the form within the light began to resolve, he finally understood. This wasn't just Goblin Slave. He knew exactly who and what this was. Meanwhile, in the pristine, sterile offices of the Hunter Association, a desk worker typed Kim Hanol's name into the central database. His profile appeared on the screen, a testament to his unremarkable career. Hunter rank E, a single skill, and a Hunter activity record of 0 missions. The receptionist looked up from her screen, her expression a mixture of professionalism and thinly veiled pity. She confirmed his details one last time, her tone emphasizing the foolishness of his request. An E rank, working solo, on his very first mission. She presented him with the handful of requests available to a hunter of his rank. Hanol scanned them carefully. He needed a mission that was remote, quiet, and unlikely to draw any attention while he tested his new, unprecedented abilities. His eyes settled on one in particular. He selected the request, pointing to it on the holographic display. The receptionist's eyebrows rose in concern. That area was isolated, with no guarantee of backup if things went wrong. She questioned his choice, but Hanol simply offered a small, confident smile and confirmed it. Sighing softly at what she perceived as reckless optimism, the woman began processing his registration. An E-rank hunter going on a solo hunt. She murmured to herself. She informed him the details would be sent to his phone. As a final step, he placed his hand on a scanner for fingerprint identification. A soft chime indicated completion. The receptionist bid him farewell, and he turned to leave, his polite demeanor masking the storm of anticipation raging within him. Walking out of the association building, the weight of the moment finally settled on him. This was it, his first hunter job. He was nervous, but beneath the fear was a powerful current of excitement. It was time to see what his new skill could really do. He arrived at the designated location, a quiet village nestled against a lush mountain range. The request details were straightforward. Eliminate a nest of goblins that had taken up residence in the nearby forest. An easy, if unprofitable, task for most hunters. An old man, the village chief, ran to greet him, his face etched with relief. He grabbed Hanol's hands, thanking him profusely for coming all the way out to their shabby village. Hanol, and used to being treated with such reverence, assured the man it was simply his job. The chief explained how the goblins had terrorized them for a week, preventing anyone from going near the mountain. Hanol nodded in understanding. He knew why the quest had gone unanswered. For any other hunter, the low pay wasn't worth the travel time. The chief's expression then shifted to one of deep concern. He asked if Hanol would truly be all right on his own, his voice trembling slightly. He'd heard that goblins, despite their size, were tougher than they looked and was worried for their benefactor's safety. Hanol placed a reassuring hand on the chief's. He looked the old man in the eyes and made a firm promise, his voice steady and filled with a confidence he'd never felt before. He swore that nothing would happen to the village, or to him. With tearful gratitude, the chief finally relented. After finally calming the emotional village chief, Hanol ventured into the forest where the goblins were last seen. He found a small clearing that seemed like the right place and scanned the area. The woods were still, with no immediate sign of danger. Then, a series of strange cackles and gurgles reached his ears. He cautiously peered through the foliage and froze. A trio of goblins were gathered by a spring, leisurely drinking from a gourd, looking for all the world like a group of middle-aged men on a relaxing hike. He stared, completely baffled by the absurdly peaceful scene. He had expected vicious monsters, not this. However, their utter lack of awareness presented a golden opportunity. This was the perfect chance to summon his ally without being noticed. Reaching into his newly manifested inventory, he materialized a pulsating blue orb, the summoning core. His heart hammered against his ribs. This single object held the key to his entire future. It was time to put it to the test. With a grunt of effort, he hurled the glowing sphere with all his might. It sailed through the air, a comet of blue light arcing towards the oblivious creatures. "Go, goblin slave," he yelled, the command feeling both strange and powerful on his tongue. The orb landed in the clearing with a dull thud, its light fizzling out. The goblins turned, their expressions shifting from lazy contentment to confusion as they stared at the inert object. Nothing happened. Panol watched in horror as the summoning completely failed. The goblins' confusion instantly morphed into snarling rage as they spotted him hiding in the trees. Panic flooded his senses. This wasn't how the system was supposed to work. He was exposed, outmatched, and it was already too late to run. With his one hope having failed him, Panol knew he was cornered. He had no choice but to fight them himself, summon or no summon. As the feral creatures charged, their claws glinting in the sunlight, a desperate scream tore from his throat. "Aya!" Just as the lead goblin lunged, its claws inches from his face, the dormant orb exploded in a blinding flash of golden light. A system message, crisp and clear, appeared in his vision. "Goblin slave is being summoned." It had worked after all. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, a dark, cloaked figure materialized from the light. With impossible speed, it intercepted the charging goblin, a flash of steel bisecting the creature in a spray of blood. Panol stood frozen, staring in utter disbelief at the powerful warrior that now stood before him. The memories came flooding back in a torrent. When he first started playing Fightmon, his very first monster was a pathetic goblin slave. But he had cherished it. He poured every rare item, every enhancement, every piece of legendary gear he found into that one monster, transforming it into an unstoppable juggernaut that cleared over 100 waves by itself. And that monster was this guy. His guy? The system confirmed it, revealing an inventory filled with A-rank equipment and a new, unbelievable perk. He could access the inventory of the first monster he ever hired from the game. This wasn't just any goblin slave. This was Gono. As the goblin horde charged, a blinding flash of light erupted from the summoning circle. In an instant, a figure cloaked in shadow and swirling blue energy materialized. With impossible speed, it moved like a phantom, its blade a silver streak that bisected the lead goblin before it could even register the threat. The cloaked warrior, Gono, landed softly amidst the carnage, his form radiating an aura of absolute dominance. The remaining goblins froze, their primal rage instantly replaced by abject terror. One let out a pathetic shriek and turned to flee, its instincts screaming that it was no match for the predator that had just appeared. But escape was not an option. Gono let out a guttural cry, a promise of the violence to come. A system window materialized, unseen by the goblins, announcing the activation of a skill, Rook Crow's Wingbeat. Ethereal wings of pure energy sprouted from his boots, propelling him forward with the force of a thunderclap. He became a living bolt of lightning, crackling with raw power as he shot across the clearing. The ground shattered beneath him, the air itself seeming to part before his incredible velocity. The fleeing goblin didn't stand a chance, its desperate sprint utterly futile against the A-rank skill. The impact was devastating. In a chaotic whirlwind of blue energy and splintered earth, Gono tore through the creature, leaving nothing but a bloody mist in his wake. He landed with a triumphant, almost smug grin, the last of the goblin horde now just scattered remains around him. Panol could only stare, his mind reeling from the display of overwhelming power. He was trembling, not from fear, but from sheer disbelief. He tried to reconcile this unstoppable warrior with the pathetic goblin slave from his memories. "No way," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "Gono was that strong?" The terrifying warrior trotted over to Hanol, the intimidating aura completely vanishing. Gono let out a series of chirps, "Karuk, Karuk," and nudged him expectantly. Hanol was taken aback, realizing with dawning absurdity that this god-tier summon was acting like a dog, eagerly awaiting praise for a job well done. Gono's eyes, now strangely gentle, held a questioning look that baffled Hanol. Suddenly, a system window popped into view. Gono affection, 20 out of 100. Hanol's confusion deepened. Affection, he thought, utterly bewildered. What is this, some kind of dating sim? Another notification followed, its words sending a familiar jolt through his soul. When affection is completely filled, you can obtain a new skill. A new skill, the phrase echoed in his mind, the very key to his reawakening. The potential of this new system began to dawn on him. The logic was simple, if bizarre. Praise equals affection, and affection equals skills. Without a moment's hesitation, Hanol awkwardly pulled Gono into a hug, patting him on the back. "Okay, you did so. Well," he said, forcing a laugh. Immediately, a system alert confirmed his theory. Gono's affection had increased by 10 points. Hanol surveyed the blood-soaked clearing, a practical problem surfacing in his mind. Anyway, even after killing these monsters, there's no loot dropping, he mused. Just then, Gono tugged on his sleeve, grunting insistently to get his attention. Hanol watched as Gono moved with practiced efficiency, plunging his hands into the goblin corpses. To Hanol's surprise, Gono extracted several glowing, crystalline stones. He presented the glimmering gems to his master, who immediately recognized them. They were mana stones, the core of a monster's power. Gono then gestured towards an empty space in the air. A swirling vortex of blue energy began to coalesce, humming with magical power. Hanol's eyes widened. It was a gate, but far smaller and more stable than the chaotic portals he was used to seeing. With a flick of his wrist, Gono tossed the 3 mana stones into the miniature gate. The stones vanished into the vortex, and a system notification instantly appeared. A sale had been completed, depositing 30 gold from the mysterious Dream Lord's castle. The pieces clicked into place. "Oh, I see. Now I get it," Hanol thought, a slow smile spreading across his face. This reality operated on different rules than the game. Monsters here didn't drop items. They dropped mana stones, which could be sold for gold through this strange gate system. Now understanding the process, he gave Gono another heartfelt pat on the head. "Nicely done, Gono." The goblin chirped happily as his affection rose by another 5 points. With his funds secured, Hanol felt a surge of confidence. "Good. I've got gold now, so time to collect proof for the request." As they stood in the quiet clearing, a deep, guttural roar suddenly echoed from the depths of the forest, shaking the trees to their very roots. The sound was heavy, filled with a terrifying power that made the hair on Hanol's arms stand up. "What was that?" he exclaimed, his senses screaming at him. "Is there another monster nearby?" The forest fell silent for a moment, only to be followed by the sound of heavy, earth-shaking footsteps. Each impact was a tremor, growing closer and closer. Hanol's face hardened, his initial confidence replaced with grim certainty. This isn't some goblin, he thought, his body tensing. Something is coming. A colossal shadow fell over the clearing, eclipsing the sunlight. A monstrous form stepped out from behind the trees, a behemoth of muscle and rage. "Oh heavens!" Hanol gasped, his blood running cold. "Why is an ogre showing up here?" This was a disaster. An ogre was at least a B-rank monster, a creature of immense power that should never be found in an E-rank request area. The sheer absurdity of the situation was terrifying. Why was a beast like this here? As panic set in, Hanol noticed something. The ogre was already wounded, its thick hide marred by clean cuts that looked like they were made by a blade. It seemed someone had fought it recently. But even an injured ogre possessed the combat power of a B-rank hunter or higher. A system alert flashed urgently in his vision, adding to his despair. Gono's summon had only 3 minutes remaining. He felt a powerful urge to cut his losses and flee, but running away now felt like throwing away the second chance he'd been given. Just as his resolve wavered, Gono let out a defiant cry, "Karuk!" He stepped in front of Hanol, planting his feet firmly and raising his massive club. Despite the immense size difference, he stood his ground, a fearless sentinel between his master and the towering monster. Hanol was stunned by the goblin's unwavering loyalty. Gono turned his head slightly, and their eyes met. In that gaze, Hanol saw a clear message. Taking a deep breath, he made his choice. Right? For now, all I can do is trust Gono. With his heart pounding, he gave the command, "Please, win this." The system acknowledged the reactivation of Recro's wingbeat. Gono exploded in a torrent of blue energy, launching himself like a cannonball directly at the charging ogre. The ogre roared, swinging its colossal tree-trunk club in a wide arc. But Gono was a blur of motion, weaving under the attack with impossible agility. He used the beast's own momentum against it, spiraling up its arm and into the air, his blade poised to strike a devastating blow. Like a falling star, Gono descended, his weapon glowing with concentrated power. He slammed into the ogre's shoulder, the impact echoing like a thunderclap through the forest. The giant beast bellowed in pain and fury, staggered by the goblin's surprising strength. Enraged, the ogre ignored the pain and snatched Gono out of the air with its massive hand. Red energy crackled around its fist as it began to squeeze, intending to crush the small warrior into pulp. Gono let out a pained grunt as the immense pressure threatened to shatter his bones. But Gono was not finished. With a defiant roar, he unleashed a massive wave of blue energy from his body. The concussive blast shattered the ogre's grip, sending the giant stumbling backward as the shockwave washed over the clearing, forcing even Hanol to brace himself. The battle was over. Gono stood victorious over the fallen ogre's dissipating body, his glowing eyes fixed on the defeated foe. Overcome with relief, Hanol rushed to his side. "Gono, you did it. That was amazing, absolutely amazing," he cried, grabbing his summit's hands in celebration. A final countdown appeared. Gono's time was up. With his last few seconds, he reached into the ogre's fading corpse and pulled out a massive, brilliantly glowing mana stone. He placed it in Hanol's hands just as the system announced his return, and he vanished in a column of light. Hanol knelt in the silent clearing, the warm mana stone cradled in his hands. He couldn't believe he'd actually managed to take down an ogre, an unexpected and massive gain. His thoughts, however, were quickly drawn back to the strange, swirling gate that remained nearby. Curious about the value of such a high-rank stone, he approached the gate and tossed it in. The vortex consumed it instantly, and the system notified him of the reward, 100 gold deposited, bringing his total earnings to 130. He had made a small fortune in mere minutes. But there was another notification. For selling a mana stone imbued with an ogre's soul for the very first time, the system was calculating an additional bonus reward. Hanol's eyes widened. An additional reward? What could it be? The system pinged again, revealing the bonus, one premium draw ticket, issued from the Lord's Castle. Hanol knew this item all too well from his gaming days. It was a gacha ticket that offered a chance at extremely rare items, but its notoriously terrible odds were legendary among players. A crackle of energy and a flash of light brought him back to reality. A solid, ornate treasure chest materialized in his hands, the infamous ticket made real. He stared at it, a mix of hope and cynicism warring within him. This was either the key to his future or just another disappointment. He assumed any item pulled would be for his monsters, but the system chimed in with a world-changing clarification. Items obtained from draws can also be equipped by the user. The implications hit him like a physical blow. The game-breaking, stat-boosting items he had poured into Gono, he could use them himself. His heart raced with the incredible possibilities. Just as he was about to open the chest, a voice shouted from the woods. "Over here." Hanol froze. A human voice? Someone was coming. He reluctantly decided to save the ticket for later. just as a team of fully armored hunters burst into the clearing. The team leader, tracking the ogre's trail, skidded to a halt, his eyes wide with shock. His team stopped behind him, their expressions mirroring his own. Before them stood a lone, unarmed young man in a tracksuit, standing over the fresh corpse of the very B-rank monster they had been hunting. Hanol instantly recognized the woman at the front of the group, Yoon Sua, an A-rank team leader from the prestigious Pungbik Guild. He put two and two together. These were the powerful hunters who had wounded the ogre in the first place. This just got annoying, he muttered under his breath. The hunters closed the distance, their heavy boots thudding on the dirt. The team leader stepped forward, his gaze hard. "We're from Pungbik Guild," he announced gruffly. "This ogre is a special type monster we were hunting." Yoon Sua's piercing golden eyes then locked onto Hanol, her voice sharp as steel as she asked, "Did you, by any chance, kill this ogre?" A single drop of sweat traced a path down Hanol's temple. The air was thick with tension. He had, by complete accident, stolen the prey of an A-rank hunter team from one of the country's top guilds. His mind raced, desperately trying to figure out how he was supposed to get out of this. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Hanol stood alone before the assembled might of the Pungbik Guild, the massive corpse of the ogre serving as a grim centerpiece to their standoff. Yoon Sua's eyes, sharp and analytical, flickered from the slain beast to the unassuming man who stood before it, her mind racing to comprehend the impossible. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of disbelief. Did he take it down alone? Even with its prior injuries, this was a B-rank or higher monster. She remembered the brutal struggle, how even her three powerful B-rank hunters had been thrown back by the ogre's might. To fell such a creature single-handedly, this man had to be at least an A-rank. Suppressing her astonishment, Yoon Sua adopted the polished demeanor of a guild team leader and stepped forward. Extending a gloved hand, she broke the silence with a cool, professional tone, introducing herself and her guild. Beneath the formal greeting, however, her mind was sharp, calculating every detail to understand just what kind of person this mysterious hunter truly was. Hanol met her gaze and returned the handshake, simply stating his name. But as their hands touched, a brilliant golden light, unseen by Hanol, flooded Yoon Sua's vision. A system message materialized before her, a declaration from a divine entity that sent a shockwave through her very being. A throne, one of the celestial powers, was interested in this man. She recoiled slightly, her eyes widening in stunned disbelief. She studied him again, searching for any sign of an overwhelming aura or divine presence, but found none. He was just a man, his expression now one of mild confusion at her sudden change in demeanor. How could someone who attracted the attention of a throne seem so ordinary? The gruff hunter from before repeated the question, his voice demanding a clear answer. Hanol, choosing his words carefully, gave an evasive reply. He tried to diffuse the situation, acknowledging that they had done the hard work and that his final blow was merely a stroke of luck. Yoon Sua's gaze sharpened, her mind dismissing his explanation entirely. This wasn't a beast that could be felled by luck alone. He was clearly hiding his true strength. Seeing no benefit in confrontation, she made a swift, calculated decision. "In that case," she announced, her voice leaving no room for argument, "we'd like to relinquish our claim to the ogre you hunted." Hanol was floored. "Relinquish it?" he stammered, his mind reeling. He had essentially stolen their hunt, an act that usually led to severe conflict, yet they were handing it over without a fight. Yoon Sua confirmed her offer, stating the guild would handle the corpse and ensure he was paid for his assistance. Just as Hanol began to process his good fortune, Yoon Sua's voice cut in again. "In return," she said, her expression unreadable, "there's just one thing I'd like to ask." Hanol tensed immediately, realizing the offer wasn't without its price. Of course, a top guild wouldn't give up a valuable prize for free. But the request that came was the last thing he expected. As she pulled out her phone, the tense atmosphere was bizarrely shattered by a cascade of sparkling effects. With a faint blush, Yoon Sua looked at him and asked, "Hunter Hanol, could I have your number?" Hanol could only stare back, his mind blank with utter confusion. After parting ways with the Pungbeak Guild, Hanol was met by the grateful village chief. The old man shook his hand warmly, thanking him over and over for saving them from the ogre. Hanol humbly deflected the praise, but the chief insisted, wishing there was some way he could properly repay him for his monumental deed. A thought sparked in Hanol's mind. "Actually, village chief," he began, "there might be something." He inquired about a famous local place called Suryunbi. The chief's expression immediately brightened, recognizing the name with a knowing smile. "Suryunbi, you say?" "Of course," the chief exclaimed, pointing Hanol down a sun-dappled forest path. He explained it was a local landmark, a place said to bring good luck to all who visit it. Though Hanol wasn't one for superstitions, the idea of a little extra luck felt too opportune to ignore. He followed the path and soon arrived in a quiet clearing, dominated by a single, towering stone monolith. Clutching the premium reward box he'd received, a small smile played on his lips. "Who knows?" he muttered to himself. "Maybe I'll pull something better if I draw in a lucky spot." Just as he was about to open the chest, his phone vibrated with an incoming message. He was surprised to see Yoon Sua's name flash on the screen. He had expected any follow-up to come from a generic guild contact, not the A-rank team leader herself. The text was brief and professional, confirming that her guild would handle the ogre corpse and for him to contact them later. Shaking his head at the strange encounter, Hanol refocused on the task at hand. He looked down at the ornate chest, a familiar sight from his countless hours in Fightmon. He knew the odds of getting something truly great were astronomical, but the possibility was intoxicating. "Please," he whispered, his hopes high. "Just something around A rank would be great." A system prompt appeared, asking for confirmation to use his premium draw ticket. With a deep breath and a steady voice, he commanded it to open. The ticket vanished, and the chest in his hands began to tremble violently before exploding in a blinding torrent of golden energy that swirled around him. From this box, items of all grades could emerge, but the rarest and most powerful, Grade S, was always heralded by a signature golden light. As the luminescence surrounding Hanol intensified, his eyes widened in shock. But then, the brilliant gold began to deepen, shifting into a color he had never seen from a draw before, a profound, pulsating crimson. Sometime later, Hanol was back in his apartment, reclining in his gaming chair as he contemplated his new reality. He had figured out a method to earn gold by hunting, a crucial first step. However, an unexpected problem had emerged. When he opened the status window to hire new monsters, the options were completely grayed out. He scrolled through the long list of potential hires, but he couldn't select any of them. Only two were available, the cheap goblin fighter and the prohibitively expensive ogre berserker. Why these two, specifically, out of all the possibilities? What was the condition he was missing? His eyes landed on the 420 gold ogre berserker, and suddenly, everything clicked. The image of the slain ogre in the forest flashed in his mind. The system must have a condition. He could only hire monster types he had already defeated in battle. It was the only explanation. Having to personally defeat monsters was a tough requirement, but a new sense of determination filled him. It wasn't an impossible hurdle, not with the incredible prize he'd received from the draw. The memory of that stunning crimson light returned, along with the item it had produced, a pair of unique grade beholder's glasses. He held the glasses, a faint red aura emanating from the frame. A unique grade item was the stuff of legends in Fightmon, a tier so rare most players believed it was unobtainable. A single item of this caliber was worth more than an entire arsenal of A-rank equipment combined. And the most unbelievable part was the system's confirmation that he, the Lord, could equip the item himself. A thrill of anticipation shot through him as he thought of the possibilities. "Let's see, then," he whispered, lifting the glasses to his face. The moment the glasses settled on his nose, a blinding wave of power washed over him. His vision filled with the familiar blue light of his status window, but the numbers were different. "Whoa," he exclaimed, staring in shock. Every single one of his base stats had increased by 5, and a new skill, Sage's Eye, had been added to his repertoire. A slow, incredulous smile spread across his face. "This is insane," he breathed. The unique item's effects were real and applied directly to him. The new skill, Sage's Eye, was a game-changer. The ability to know an enemy's stats and skills before a fight was an unimaginable strategic advantage. This was exactly the kind of power he needed to get ahead. Hunting would no longer be a guessing game of trial and error. By learning about a monster's strengths and weaknesses ahead of time, he could formulate the perfect strategy for every encounter, making his hunts drastically more efficient and safe. But as the initial euphoria faded, a disquieting thought crept into his mind. He took the glasses off, his expression turning serious. Nothing in this world was free. Why would he, a former no-name streamer and E-rank hunter, suddenly be granted this incredible power? The question lingered, a dark cloud over his newfound hope. His contemplation was shattered by a cacophony of alarms as his room was flooded with crimson light. Glitching, holographic warnings materialized all around him, their message stark and urgent. "Warning! A wave will begin shortly. Prepare for defense." He scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding with confusion and alarm. The frantic red warnings solidified, coalescing into a massive blue interface he recognized instantly. It was the game screen from Fightmon, displaying a 10-minute countdown timer. The system announced the imminent start of the 701st monster wave, commanding him once again to prepare for defense. "Prepare for defense," he echoed, his voice trembling. His mind conjured images of the late-game waves, hordes of terrifying dragons, demonic beasts, and colossal titans. The thought of facing such an army right now, in his own apartment, sent a chill of pure dread down his spine. Panic began to set in. "Is there any way to refuse?" he yelled into the empty room. "What happens if I fail to block the wave?" The system responded immediately, its words cold and absolute. Failure meant the loss of his castle, his home, and the complete erasure of all the powers he had just gained. But there was more. A horrifying vision filled his mind, reflected in his wide, terrified eyes. A vision of his city in flames, of the entire world crumbling to ash and ruin. The system's final, devastating sentence sealed his fate. In addition, the current world will be destroyed. A sudden, intrusive system window materialized in his apartment, its stark blue light casting long shadows across the room. The message was clear and terrifyingly real. A monster wave, the 701st, would begin in just 10 minutes. Hunnell stared, his mind struggling to catch up. A holographic display of a castle map, identical to the one from his favorite game, now hovered before him. "Stop the monsters right now," he murmured, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow as the line between his past obsession and his present reality dissolved completely. A surge of crackling energy flashed across the tactical map, the sight instantly familiar. This was a monster defense game, just like the one he had poured years of his life into. The interface, the mechanics, the very concept of a wave, it was all the same. Confusion warred with a rising sense of dread. "Why am I suddenly being told to play the game?" He questioned the empty air, the system's silence offering no comfort. His thoughts spiraled as he considered the absurdly high stakes mentioned before, the penalty for failure. An apocalyptic vision seared itself into his mind. A city, his city, engulfed in flames, crumbling to ash under a sky choked with smoke. The penalty wasn't just losing his new powers, it was the end of everything. A new system alert shattered his horror, the countdown now ticking relentlessly. 9 minutes and 23 seconds until the invasion began. Hunnell let out a long, shaky breath, forcing the panic down. There was no point in questioning the impossible reality he'd been thrown into. Time was a luxury he didn't have. With newfound resolve, he reached out, his hand hovering over the glowing interface. What mattered now was survival, and that meant preparing for the battle to come. His mind raced, dredging up years of forgotten knowledge. Manhwa was a deceptively simple defense game on the surface, but its extreme difficulty demanded absolute mastery. Victory depended on a thorough understanding of countless interlocking systems, placing the right monsters in the right locations, installing powerful defensive structures within the castle, and utilizing a vast array of items. He pictured himself manipulating the familiar menus, a ghost of his old self. By combining numerous elements, one had to devise the perfect strategy and tactics to counter each unique wave. This intricate, high-stakes chess match against overwhelming odds was the very core of the game, a game he knew better than anyone. His fingers made contact with the hologram, causing ripples of light to emanate from the point of impact. The controls were touch-based, just as he'd expected. There was no time to waste. Then the troops I can currently use are, he muttered, diving into the monster deployment menu. The system immediately responded, initiating a scan of his available forces. The system's report was bleak, for monsters had been delivered from his recent sale of magic stones. Including his own goblin slave, he had a grand total of 5 units at his disposal. A small window displayed the pitiful army, 3 goblin spearmen, 1 ogre berserker, and his loyal goblin slave, Gono. He realized with a jolt that the very monsters he had sold to the system were now his only line of defense. A flicker of hope ignited as he considered his past exploits. "Can I also use the Lord like before?" he asked, referring to his god-tier units from the game. But the system crushed his hopes with a cold, absolute message. The Dream Butler and the Lord were unavailable. He tried another route, purchasing additional troops with his own gold, only to be met with another denial. It was impossible to hire new monsters after a wave notification. Frustration boiled within him. "Are you telling me to clear this, or not?" The system ignored his outburst, instead displaying information on the approaching enemy. The 701st wave was Count Giller and his Dragon Fang unit. The name alone sent a shiver down his spine. The full roster appeared, revealing a 6-star commander leading an army of 45-star wyverns and 25-star half-drakes. A total of 61 elite monsters were about to descend upon him. Count Giller, a 6-star monster. Hunnell knew exactly what that meant. In Manhwa, the star rank was a direct indicator of a monster's combat power, a metric that determined the very possibility of a fight. He recalled countless battles from his past. A monster's star rank represented its power so absolutely that if the difference was too great, victory wasn't just improbable, it was fundamentally impossible. A lone warrior facing a colossal beast was not a battle, but an execution. This was common sense in the brutal world of the game. He looked at the cards representing his army, 1-star goblins and a 3-star ogre. Then he pictured the coming storm, 1 6-star and 65-star monsters. The disparity was a cruel joke. Defeat seemed inevitable. In this state, it's hard enough to even take down 1, let alone 61, he thought, his hope beginning to crumble. What should I do? Just as despair began to take hold, a new message flashed on screen. As the sole player, he was being granted a special privilege for this wave only. He could choose 1 defensive structure and 1 item to aid his defense. A single thread of hope in an ocean of impossibility. 1 defensive structure and 1 item, he repeated, his mind already calculating the possibilities. He looked at the interface, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "Are you telling me to clear the 701st wave with just this much of a privilege?" It was an insane proposition, and yet, a sly, predatory grin spread across his face. As a veteran of this dead game, I have my own way. With the timer bleeding away, his fingers danced across the holographic screen. "I've played this game longer than anyone," he thought, his confidence surging. "Others might wonder how I'll block the wave in this state, but I can do it." He poured every ounce of his accumulated knowledge into his selections, his movements a blur of practiced efficiency. As the final seconds ticked away, his plan was set. His weak monster cards seemed to glow with potential. With his chosen perks, even this pathetic army could stand against the dragon horde. "I can block them all," he declared. The countdown hit 0. With a final, determined gulp, he stared down the coming storm. "Now, I've done everything I can," he thought. His expression hardened into a mask of pure focus. He braced himself, every nerve alight with anticipation. "Come on, bring it." The final notification flashed. Wave start. The air itself seemed to tremble as the world outside his window was blotted out by a tide of crimson and shadow. Dozens of wyverns and drakes, their eyes glowing with malice, descended from the sky in a terrifying, coordinated swarm. At the heart of the maelstrom, their leader, Count Guller, floated with his arms crossed, his long white hair whipping in the wind. He watched with disdain as his forces swarmed towards a shimmering, hexagonal barrier that had materialized around the apartment building, Hanal's castle. The wave had officially begun. The dragon horde slammed into the blue shield with a deafening crash. Claws scraped, fangs gnashed, and bodies thudded against the energy field, but it held firm. Count Giller's stoic expression cracked with a flash of annoyance. His initial, overwhelming assault had been stopped cold. A smirk played on Hanal's lips. The strategy worked. He had chosen a defensive structure with a unique property. No matter the strength of the attack, its durability would only decrease by a single point. With a starting durability of 100, it was the perfect defense against an army of heavy hitters. The Infinite Barrier was an overpowered, beginner-exclusive item with a strict condition for its use. It could only be installed when the average troop rank was 2-star or lower. His pathetic army, once a source of despair, had become the very key to his survival. It was a strategy only available to someone at the absolute bottom. Suddenly, the wyverns unleashed a coordinated volley of fireballs, blanketing the barrier in explosions. A stream of notifications flooded Hanal's vision. Durability decreased by 1. Durability decreased by 1. Again and again, the shield buckled under the sheer number of simultaneous attacks. Hanal watched the durability bar plummet. The barrier's weakness was volume. With 61 monsters attacking, its health dropped to 39 in an instant. But a confident smile remained on his face. But there's a way to deal with this too. His hand became a blur, his fingers tapping the holographic interface at an inhuman speed. With every click, the barrier's durability ticked upward. The barrier recovers 1 durability per click, he thought, his grin widening. That attack? I just have to repair it with mad clicking. The shield held steady under the onslaught, his furious tapping matching the pace of the dragon's assault. His hand already ached, but the defense was secure. All right, he mused, turning his attention to the next phase of his plan. Next, what should I use to catch those guys? From the peak of his protected castle, a thin beam of golden light shot forth, striking a wyvern squarely in the side. A system message appeared. Wyvern 1 took 1 damage. It was a minuscule amount, almost insulting, but it was a start. Inside the barrier, his goblins were now armed. Normally, their attacks would be useless against a high-ranking wyvern, but each one now held a simple, glowing spoon. This was his second privilege, the A-grade item, Hashan's Spoon. It allowed any monster to deal ranged damage that completely ignored rank differences. A hail of tiny projectiles, launched from the spoons, pelted the dragon army. Each one registered as a single point of damage. One wyvern took a minuscule projectile to the head, screeching more in annoyance than pain. But Hanal knew the truth. If they kept getting hit, eventually, they would fall. He did a quick mental calculation as his goblins continued their relentless, pitiful assault. Based on their health pools and the rate of damage, it would take about 60 hours. A grim smile touched his lips. All he had to do now was keep repairing the barrier and endure for 60 agonizing hours. With his fingers flying across the console, he settled in for the long haul. A battle of pure attrition had begun. Let's see, he challenged the game, whether I pull them out faster, or if they'll die faster from being hit by a spoon. The unblinking eyes of Count Guller met the jeering grin of a goblin warrior, 2 commanders locked in an absurd stalemate. Explosions continued to rock the barrier as the hours began to crawl by. Hanal was drenched in sweat, his arm aching from the constant motion, but his fingers never stopped. It's not as easy as I thought. He panted, his eyes darting to a water bottle on his desk. He desperately needed a drink. As he reached for the bottle, a dark, shadowy energy snaked around his body, freezing him in place. He tried to move, but he was completely paralyzed, his feet seemingly rooted to the floor. A system message popped up, cold and unforgiving. Other actions are restricted during play. His fist clenched in frustration. So this was the catch. He couldn't eat, drink, or even rest. With his movement restricted, he had no choice but to stand here and click for 60 consecutive hours. For any normal person, it would be an impossible, despair-inducing ordeal. But Hanol wasn't a normal person. As the dragons unleashed another, even more ferocious fiery assault, he didn't flinch. The real game, the true test of endurance, was only just beginning. The castle was engulfed in a sea of apocalyptic flames. The durability of the barrier was being consumed at an alarming rate, the notifications blurring into a continuous stream. Yet, through it all, Hanol's clicking never faltered. 2 hours passed in a frantic blur of light and sound. The timer on his screen now showed 57 hours and 57 minutes remaining. A droplet of sweat rolled down his temple, but a small, unwavering smile remained on his face. The penalty was world destruction. The conditions were stacked against him, but none of that was a reason to give up. A surge of defiant energy coursed through him. "All right, you blasted game," he snarled, his eyes glowing with manic intensity. "Let's see you try. Let's see who wins." Time became a meaningless concept, measured only in the relentless rhythm of his clicking. On the holographic screen, his meager goblin army chipped away at monstrous wyverns and drakes, each attack dealing a single, insignificant point of damage. 12 hours had bled into one another, a blur of focus and exhaustion. A single bead of sweat traced a path down his temple, a testament to the marathon battle he was waging not just for his home, but for the entire world. With 48 hours still to go, the war of attrition had only just begun. He leaned closer to the ethereal glow of the game window, his eyes narrowed in concentration. It was a slow, painstaking process, a war fought 1 point of damage at a time. Yet, against all odds, the damage was accumulating, the health bars of the colossal beast slowly, almost imperceptibly, shrinking. A grim smile touched his lips. This was his element, a battle of endurance he had perfected over years of thankless grinding. If he could just maintain this pace, victory was not impossible. Finally, a breakthrough. With a final, coordinated volley of attacks, 2 of the airborne wyverns shattered into motes of light, their dying shrieks silent in his apartment. The system confirmed their demise, and the monster counter ticked down, a small but significant victory. Finally, they're starting to fall, he breathed, a wave of renewed hope washing over his fatigue. This was working. He just had to hold out. The remaining monsters, enraged by their fallen comrades, redoubled their assault on the shimmering blue barrier protecting his castle. The air crackled with their fury, a storm of claws and fire that threatened to overwhelm his defenses. Yet Hanol kept pace, his fingers a blur as he targeted one beast after another. The monster count continued to drop, each kill a small triumph in the face of overwhelming odds. He was tired, so incredibly tired, but he couldn't stop. The first rays of dawn pierced through his window, illuminating a room that had not seen sleep. He hadn't even noticed the night pass, his entire being consumed by the desperate defense. He gritted his teeth, the muscles in his jaw aching from the strain. The monster count fell from 51 to 49, a sign that his relentless assault was accelerating. The end felt impossibly far, yet closer than ever before. As the horde thinned, its commander finally came into view, a regal, vampiric figure with pointed ears and crimson eyes that burned with cold fury. This was Count Giller, the leader of the Dragon Child unit. He watched from atop his mount as his forces were systematically dismantled by an unseen, relentless foe, his expression twisting from arrogance into pure, unadulterated rage. The battle entered its final, brutal phase. Hanol pushed through the haze of exhaustion, his clicks becoming almost automatic. One by one, the mighty drakes and wyverns fell from the sky, their bodies crashing into the scorched earth below. The system notifications became a blur of victories, the monster count plummeting until only 2 remained, the enraged Count Giller and his final, powerful drake. His eyelids felt like lead. For a single, fatal moment, his head dipped, his body finally succumbing to the crushing weight of sleeplessness. In that instant, a cascade of red alerts flooded his screen. Warning, warning. The barrier's durability, which he had been painstakingly repairing, plummeted from 5 to 0 in a heartbeat. Seizing the opportunity, the last two monsters unleashed a final, cataclysmic attack. A beam of concentrated energy, a desperate gambit to end the battle, tore through the sky. It slammed into the defenseless barrier, which shattered like glass under the immense pressure. A system notification, stark and red, confirmed his worst fear. The barrier's durability has been fully depleted. Hanol's eyes shot open, pupils shrinking in horror. Whwa? The realization hit him like a physical blow. He had dozed off, just for a second, and that was all it took. The one mistake he couldn't afford to make, and he had made it. Panic seized him, cold and absolute. If the castle takes even a single hit, it's over. The world ends. Just as the final, desperate attack from the Count's Drake was about to impact his home, a flash of blue and black energy erupted from the castle gates. A familiar figure, a warrior he knew better than any other, moved to intercept. "Gono!" Hanol cried out, a mix of shock and desperate hope in his voice. It was indeed Gono, his cherished goblin slave, now an unstoppable warrior clad in legendary gear. With a speed that defied reality, he met the Drake head-on. Gono leaped into the air, his body wreathed in a dark, powerful aura, and brought his weapon down in a devastating arc. The blow connected with a sickening crunch, and the massive Drake exploded in a shower of gore, its final attack nullified. Gono landed gracefully amidst the debris of his vanquished foe, the very ground seeming to tremble at his presence. He stood silhouetted against the rising sun, club resting on his shoulder, the undisputed victor of the wave. Hanol could only stare, his mind reeling from the sudden, violent conclusion. His monster, his old friend from the game, had just saved the world. A bright blue notification shattered the silence. "Congratulations. You have cleared the 701st wave." The words hung in the air, surreal and beautiful. "Oh, really?" Hanol stammered, his mind struggling to catch up. A moment later, the dam of his composure broke. "Finally, I cleared it," he roared, throwing his hands up in a cathartic explosion of relief and joy. A giddy, hysterical laugh escaped his lips. "Ha! I actually did it." The monumental strain of the past 60 hours finally caught up to him, and the world tilted on its axis. He collapsed onto the wooden floor, the victory laugh still on his lips as darkness claimed him. When he finally awoke, the sun was high in the sky, his head throbbing from the ordeal. As his consciousness returned, a new system window shimmered into existence. It was the reward settlement for the 701st wave, humorously noting that Count Giller couldn't have imagined being beaten to death by a spoon. A list of items appeared: wyvern bones, drake scales, and drake hearts. "These are monster loot, aren't they?" he murmured, wondering if these digital items had any use in the real world. Another notification followed, this one regarding a new skill. Conversation with the monarch. He saw that by surviving the wave and playing for over 50 hours, he had already fulfilled 2 of the unlock conditions. With only 3 more to go, he shrugged it off. Whatever it was, he'd be able to use it soon enough. Just as he was about to dismiss the window, a final message appeared. Checking the final reward. The words made his breath catch in his throat. Before he could question it, a blinding light erupted from the system interface, flooding his entire apartment with a brilliant, azure radiance that pulsed with untold power. This is... Hanol shielded his eyes, bewildered by the spectacle. When the light finally subsided, it wasn't a new item or skill that greeted him, but the familiar glow of his own smartphone. The screen was lit up with a notification that sent a jolt of real-world anxiety through him. 7 missed calls from Sua. Meanwhile, inside the gleaming headquarters of the Pungbik Guild, Sua was in a difficult conversation. "I still don't understand," she said, clearly perplexed. "You said that guy isn't your rank. But how did he hunt an ogre?" Her companion scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "It's a scam. You probably just claimed to kill someone else made." This man was Soo-hyuk, an S-rank hunter and the vice guild master of Pungbik. Sua tried to reason with him. You heard he underwent a reawakening recently, Appa. But Soo-hyuk was unconvinced. "Umph, how can I believe that?" he retorted. "Reawakening isn't exactly common." Still, he conceded internally, it didn't seem like a lie. Their debate was cut short by the sound of the lobby doors sliding open. Hanol rushed in, looking flustered but presentable in a smart suit. "I apologize," he called out, hurrying towards them. "Hanol, you've waited a long time," he said, his voice carrying a mix of apology and exhaustion. He reached them and immediately bowed low. "I'm sorry, I wasn't in a condition to take calls for a few days." But his apology was met with a wave of palpable fury. "Sorry? Is sorry going to cut it?" Yoon Soo-hyuk's voice was a low growl, and a terrifying aura of fire erupted around him. "You ignored my sister's calls for 3 days straight." Hanol's eyes widened as he finally recognized the terrifying man before him. "Appa, I told you not to do that." Yoon Sua snapped, placing a hand on her brother's arm to quell his fiery outburst. Soo-hyuk's anger subsided into a frustrated grumble. Turning to Hanol, Sua's expression softened. "It's okay, Hanol. You explained your situation." Hanol straightened up, immensely grateful for her intervention. Getting straight to business, Yoon Sua offered her assistance. "So, like I mentioned before, I want to help you process the ogre carcass. Which should we proceed with first, the settlement or the association report?" A confident, knowing smile spread across Hanol's face. He had been waiting for this. "In that case, I'll start with the association report." At the Hunter Association office, an employee looked over the report with skepticism. "So, you're saying Hunter Kim Hanol hunted the ogre?" Yoon Sua answered firmly. "Yes, I confirmed it. Given the situation at the time, there was no room for another hunter to intervene." She vouched for him without hesitation. The employee nervously glanced at Yoon Soo-hyuk, whose silent, intimidating presence loomed over the desk. "Since it's coming from 2 members of the Pungbeak Guild, I do believe it, but," she stammered, "the ogre is a monster that ranks from C rank up to B rank. For an E rank hunter, a verification process is required." She explained they would need to measure his stats with a mana device to verify his capability. A flicker of worry crossed Sua's face. She knew about his reawakening, but had no idea what his new stats were. Before she could suggest another way, Hanol stepped forward, his expression calm and assured. "Fine, let's do it right now, the measurement." They were led to the mana measurement chamber, a vast, technologically advanced room. Other hunters waiting for their turn began to whisper, recognizing the high-ranking siblings from Pungbeak. Soo-hyuk watched Hanol with sharp eyes, seeing this as the perfect test. He would finally see if this man had the potential the constellation saw in him, or if he was just a nobody to be ignored. Hanol approached the colossal pink mana crystal at the center of the room. The automated system scanned him, announcing to the room that he had consumed no physical enhancement potions and had no items currently equipped. He was presenting his raw, natural power for all to see. He reached out, his hand hovering just above the crystal's surface. A mana measuring device. It's been a while. The memory was still painfully clear. 7 years ago, in this very type of room, he had measured his mana for the first time. That was the day his hopes were shattered, the day he was branded with the pathetic stats of an E rank. The announcer's voice echoed through the chamber. "Registrant number 208, Hunter Kim Hanol." Commencing mana measurement. He placed his hand firmly on the crystal. This time would be different. A surge of energy flowed from him, and the crystal roared to life, a blinding light erupting from its core that pulsed with overwhelming power. The entire chamber seemed to vibrate with the sheer force of his mana. The onlookers stared, dumbfounded, while Yoon Soo-hyuk's stoic expression finally cracked, his eyes widening in disbelief. With a final, explosive flash, the light subsided, and the system's voice declared, "Measurement complete." A hush fell over the room as everyone stared at the still glowing crystal, waiting for the result. Hanol stood calmly, his back to the stunned crowd, a slight, confident smile on his face. The system's verdict was broadcast for all to hear. Analysis result. User Kim Hanol's mana rank is S rank. A wave of audible gasps and shocked cries filled the chamber as the impossible was made real. The result of the mana measurement echoed through the silent chamber, S rank. The crowd erupted into a cacophony of shocked gasps and frantic murmurs. Yoon Soo-hyuk and his associate stared, their professional composure shattered by the impossible reading on the massive crystal. Through it all, Kim Han-ol simply stood with his back to them, a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. This was just the beginning. He mused internally, to think things would turn out like this. In the midst of his triumph, a familiar system window materialized before his eyes, pulling his focus back to the game. It was a notification for the final reward for clearing the 700 first wave. A new skill had been acquired. It was a reward that would change everything. Han-ol's eyes widened. A skill? This was a real, tangible power, not just a passive trait. He read the description with mounting excitement. He could add the stats of the strongest monster from the previous wave to his own for 30 minutes a day. The implications were staggering. He had temporarily wielded the power of the mighty Count Gular. His status window confirmed it. His own pathetic stats were massively inflated by the power of the Count, pushing his totals into the realm of an S-ranker. Strength, agility, stamina, spirit, all had skyrocketed to unbelievable levels. He glanced at the timer on the skill. With just over 24 minutes remaining, he had used this incredible power at the most opportune moment imaginable. He had been unbelievably lucky. To receive such a game-changing skill right before his mana was measured was a stroke of fate. Though the power was temporary, its effect would be permanent. To the world, he was not a man with a 30-minute power-up. He was a newly emerged S-rank rookie. Han-ol turned to face the stunned onlookers, his expression calm and filled with a confidence he had never known before. Yoon Soo-hyuk, his composure regained, but his eyes still sharp with scrutiny, stepped forward. He offered a backhanded compliment, noting that Han-ol was pretty good, but still not on his level since he had achieved S-rank during his initial awakening. Han-ol simply offered a polite thank you, refusing to be drawn into the man's transparent attempt to assert dominance. Cutting straight to the point, Han-ol asked if the S-rank measurement was sufficient proof that he had hunted the ogre. The flustered Hunter Association employee, still reeling from the day's events, stammered a confirmation. The verification was complete, and the records would be sent the next day. The matter was officially closed. As Han-ol prepared to depart, Yoon Soo-hyuk called out his name, his tone shifting from rivalry to business. He offered to buy him a coffee, revealing his true position. He was the vice guild master of the Pungbeak Guild. It was a direct scouting offer from one of the most powerful men in the country, a life-changing opportunity for any hunter. The surrounding hunters buzzed with excitement at the sight of a personal recruitment from Pungbeak's vice guild master. However, Han-ol merely smiled and declined the offer. He then added a calculated remark, stating that he would contact Yoon Sua directly for any guild-related matters, a subtle slight that caught both siblings completely off guard. Leaving them stunned in his wake, Han-ol walked away, leaving the vice guild master to wonder just what kind of man he was dealing with. Back in the familiar comfort of his apartment, Han-ol scrolled through his phone. He had become famous overnight. News sites and community forums were exploding with talk of the S-rank magic rookie. He sat down at his desk, the glow of his monitors illuminating a faint smile. It was time to return to his other life, as he initiated his live stream. A message from the Hunter Association provided a small reality check. Due to regulations limiting promotions to 3 ranks at a time, his license had been upgraded from E rank to B rank. It was a slight disappointment, but an understandable bureaucratic hurdle. With a shrug, he turned his full attention to the live chat, where his viewers were already active. His loyal fans, under usernames like Block Poop with Poop and Monster Blocking Hunter, greeted him warmly. They were completely oblivious that their favorite streamer was the very topic of the hottest news in the country. They eagerly asked if he had heard about the new S-rank who had just appeared in Korea. Leaning back in his chair with a smirk, Han-ol listened as his fans recounted the rumors. They spoke of how Yoon Soo-hyuk and Yoon Sua of Pungbeak had personally brought him in. To his surprise, the gossip was startlingly accurate, even including the fact that he had refused the Vice Guildmaster's recruitment offer on the spot. He mused privately that his fans had no idea they were talking about him. Seizing the opportunity, he addressed his viewers. Since they were on the topic of hunters, he announced that he had prepared special, hunter-related content for today's stream, perfectly merging his two identities. His audience was immediately hooked. Hanol laid out his plan. For his next big event, he was going to take their recommendations and clear a dungeon of their choosing. He extended a hand towards the screen, a charismatic invitation for them to decide his next challenge. A knowledgeable viewer pointed out that broadcasting dungeon clears was illegal. Hanol calmly clarified his approach. He wouldn't stream the clear itself, but would instead provide the official clearance certificate as proof, sharing stories and details within the legally permitted limits. The innovative idea was met with a wave of excitement and approval from his fans. The chat immediately flooded with high-level dungeon suggestions. Names like the Mad Dragon's Nest and the Giant's Dining Room were thrown out, each a notoriously difficult and dangerous location. His viewers were eager to test his limits, relishing the chance to send him into the very heart of danger. The stakes were raised when one viewer, Bald is the strongest, made a staggering 1,000,001 donation with a specific challenge: conquer the spider's forest and bring back a leg from the queen. The massive donation sent the chat into a frenzy. Hanol chuckled, trying to calm his overly enthusiastic audience. Just as he was about to address the challenge, his screen exploded in a shower of golden light. A notification flashed. Viewer 1 donated 10 million won. Hanol and his entire audience were struck dumb. An avatar of a mysterious cloaked figure appeared in the chat, apologizing for not knowing how to add a message to the monumental donation. Hanol stared, a bead of sweat forming on his temple. 10 million won was not a simple donation, it was a commission. He cautiously asked the mysterious viewer 1 which dungeon they would like to recommend. The cloaked figure responded, their voice seemingly echoing through the serene image of a moonlit garden, the depths of the garden of contemplation. His viewers erupted in disbelief and fear. The depths was a mythical danger zone that no hunter had ever cleared. Hanol quickly reviewed what he knew of the dungeon. It was composed of 3 areas: the relatively safe main gate, the treacherous center, and the final, unexplored zone known simply as the depths. He recalled that no one had ever even challenged the depths. The current record for the dungeon was clearing the center, an achievement held by Yoon Soo-hyuk. Hanol remembered the Vice Guild Master himself saying that he had reached his absolute limit there. This mysterious viewer was asking him to go beyond the limits of a top S-rank hunter. As Hanol processed the suicidal nature of the request, viewer 1 spoke again, adding a crucial clarification. He didn't have to the dungeon. The mission would be considered a success as long as he's simply the depths. This changed everything. The impossible task now seemed merely improbable. Viewer 1 then promised to provide all necessary support for the attempt. Despite the generous offer, Hanol's loyal fans protested, begging him not to go. They insisted that the content wasn't worth it. If he died, it would all be over. Hanol fell into deep thought, weighing the immense risk against the potential reward. It was definitely dangerous, but if he didn't have to clear it, perhaps a quick trip in and out was feasible. With the promised support of the mysterious and clearly powerful viewer 1, he decided the chance of success wasn't zero. After a long, tense silence, Hanol took a deep breath. His mind was made up. Clenching his fist with newfound resolve, he announced his decision to the stream, his voice ringing with determination. The depths of the garden of contemplation. Let's go. The next day, Hanol sat before a receptionist at the Towering Hunter Bureau. He formally requested access to the Garden of Contemplation. When the employee asked for clarification, he stated his intention calmly and clearly. Yes, a solo expedition to the depths, please. The woman's eyes widened in shock behind her glasses. She warned him that such an attempt was incredibly dangerous for one person, but Hanol remained firm. When she began to schedule him for an opening in a week, he pressed for an earlier date, noting that as a solo hunter, he could leave anytime. Finding an unexpected opening, she scheduled him for the following afternoon. With his expedition officially booked for 4 p.m. the next day, Hanol thanked the receptionist and walked out of the bureau. He strode confidently into the sunlight, his mind already focused on the immense challenge that lay ahead. Just as he stepped onto the plaza, a voice called out his name. Hanol turned, his gaze falling upon a man he didn't recognize. The stranger confirmed his identity before asking for a moment of his time. It seemed that even before he could take on the dungeon, another unexpected challenge had found its way to him. As Hanol processed his next move, the man who had called out to him offered a friendly smile. Accompanied by a woman with striking silver-blue hair, he introduced himself as Pyo Myung-han, the HR manager for the prestigious Aegis Guild. Before Hanol could fully react, the other man turned, presenting a business card and introducing himself as Jong So-won, the HR manager for the Seniri Guild. Hanol looked down at the two cards in his hand, the situation clicking into place. The ripples from his S-rank evaluation 2 days ago were already spreading, and the biggest players in the country were taking notice. The two managers began their recruitment pitch with beaming smiles, explaining that their guilds were always searching for exceptional talent. Hanol's mind raced. Seniri and Aegis, along with Pungbik, were known as Korea's Big Three guilds. They were the absolute pinnacle of the hunter world. Assuming he had already been scouted by Pungbik, they immediately made a counteroffer, promising him far better terms than whatever their rival had proposed. Hanol, however, had priorities that far outweighed any guild contract. He politely but firmly declined their offers, stating that he had something urgent to attend to first. Turning his back on the surprised recruiters, he began to walk away. They called after him, desperately trying to tempt him with a signing bonus. But Hanol strode on, his focus already elsewhere. His decision was absolute. Joining the guild right now would be a hindrance, a set of chains when he needed to move with absolute freedom. It would only hold him back from his true objective. Pulling out his phone, he made a call, his voice low and serious as he spoke a single name into the receiver. Garden of Contemplation? On the other end of the line, sitting in a high-rise office, was Yoon Soo-hyuk, the vice guild leader of Pungbik. He confirmed that he remembered the infamous dungeon, questioning why Hanol was asking about it. Hanol, now walking through a busy subway station, didn't hesitate. I'm planning to enter the Garden of Contemplation's inner depths. Soo-hyuk was stunned into silence, recalling the immense struggle his own team faced just to clear the central area. Hanol continued, a confident smirk playing on his lips. He knew exactly how difficult the dungeon was. That was precisely why he was calling Soo-hyuk. He needed information. Soo-hyuk scoffed, his voice laced with skepticism. And why exactly should I tell you anything? Hanol's response was simple and bold. Because I have the means to clear the entire Garden of Contemplation. A bead of sweat formed on Soo-hyuk's temple. He was speechless. Was this rookie serious? To sweeten the deal, Hanol laid out an irresistible offer. If he succeeded, he would publicly announce that he did it with the help of the Pungbik Guild. The potential glory and positive press were immense. Well, Hanol pressed, are you interested in sharing that info now? Soo-hyuk leaned back in his chair, conceding that Hanol certainly seemed to have a plan. Still, the idea was preposterous. So you're really saying you can clear it alone? He asked, one last attempt to grasp the reality of the claim. Hanol's confident smile was his only answer. Indeed. Seeing an opportunity, Soo-hyuk shifted tactics and made a proposal of his own, starting with an offer to join their guild. Hanol immediately shut him down, stating he wasn't interested in any guild contracts. When Soo-hyuk began to argue that Pungbik was showing the most interest, Hanol revealed his hand, casually mentioning the business cards he'd received that very morning from Jong So-won of Seniri and Pyo Myung-han of Aegis. The revelation hit Soo-hyuk like a physical blow. His rivals had gone to see Hanol personally. A dark fury burned within him. He felt as though those two were trying to snatch away a treasure he had already claimed for his own. The competition for the new S-rank hunter had officially begun. Hanol expertly twisted the knife, pointing out that helping him now would be a strategic victory, a way for Pungbik to mark their territory on a talent their rivals were desperately eyeing. Defeated, Soo-hyuk let out a long sigh. He had no choice. He agreed to share his knowledge, but with a stark warning. His information was a year out of date and only covered the central area. The inner depths were a complete unknown. A sly grin spread across Hanul's face. He hung up the phone, his mind already processing the data. For his plan to work, that limited information was more than enough. The scene shifted, revealing a colossal, otherworldly tower that pierced the clouds, crackling with raw magical energy, the entrance to the Garden of Contemplation. The next day, Hanul stepped onto the pristine plaza before the dungeon. A group of hunters was already gathered, waiting. "You're all here already," he noted, a digital interface materializing as he equipped the beholder's glasses. The other hunters took notice, murmuring amongst themselves about the solo applicant who had managed to join their expedition. A bald man with a severe expression stepped forward, his party trailing behind him. He introduced himself as Zhou Guangsu of the Indomitable Guild. As they shook hands, he cut straight to the point. "I know who you are," he said, his eyes narrowing. "You're the guy who got an S rank on the mana measurement recently, right?" Hanul simply smiled. "Yeah, well, word travels fast." Zhou Guangsu's face twisted with barely concealed envy. He complained about how his team had to wait an entire month just to coordinate their schedules, while Hanul got to waltz in solo at the last minute. His handshake tightened into a crushing grip. "Once we're inside, you're on your own," he snarled. "Don't you dare expect any help from us." Completely unfazed, Hanul agreed with a dismissive smile, which only seemed to anger Guangsu further. The man yanked his hand away. "And don't think that S-rank measurement means anything," he spat. "Mana ranks are meaningless in actual combat." As the hostile hunter stalked off, Hanul mused that the reaction was even pricklier than he'd anticipated. He understood their frustration. A solo hunter bypassing the month-long wait and minimum party requirements was bound to be an eyesore. Adjusting his glasses, he decided to get a better look at the party he'd be entering with. He activated his skill, Sage's Eye. A flurry of blue data washed over the Indomitable Guild members, revealing their ranks. To his relief, every single one of them was a mere C rank. A small, satisfied smirk appeared on his face. This was perfect. None of them were powerful enough to follow him into the dungeon's deeper levels, which meant no witnesses to what he was about to do. His smirk did not go unnoticed. Zhou Guangsu spun around, demanding to know what was so funny. His subordinates immediately bristled, rushing to his defense and misinterpreting Hanul's amusement. One of them even accused him of laughing at their boss's baldness, escalating the already tense situation. Just as the confrontation was about to boil over, a Hunter Bureau official stepped forward, his hands glowing with green energy. "It's time. I'm opening the gate," he declared. A massive, swirling vortex of power erupted before them. The official urged them to move quickly, as the gate wouldn't remain open for long. With a final command, the hunters charged forward into the shimmering portal. The members of the Indomitable Guild vanished into the gate, one by one. Hanul stood at the threshold, feeling the crackle of dimensional energy on his skin. This was his first time ever entering a real dungeon. A thrill of anticipation shot through him as he took the final step, crossing the barrier into the unknown. "Now then," he thought, "let's see what we're up against." Instead of a dungeon, Hanul found himself floating in a starlit void. Before him sat a colossal, throne-bound figure wreathed in blue flame. A disembodied voice echoed in the emptiness. "You've arrived, Hanul. I wish you the best of luck." With a flick of its spectral wrist, the being snapped its fingers, and the universe around him began to warp and distort. A system message flashed in his vision, modifying the structure of the Garden of Contemplation at the request of the monarch's castle. A torrent of blue energy reshaped reality itself. A moment later, the blinding light faded, and all the hunters found themselves standing in a dense, unfamiliar forest, the lingering green energy of the portal dissipating around them. Zhou Guangsu stopped dead in his tracks, a frown creasing his brow. Something's not right," he muttered. His eyes widened in shock as he took in the scene. A tranquil lake surrounded by a massive, ancient tree. This was not the dungeon entrance he knew. A wave of dread washed over him as he stared at the alien landscape, sweat beading on his pale head. His guild members voiced their own confusion, confirming that this serene lakeside was nothing like the main entrance they'd seen before. A murmur of panic spread through the group as they questioned where they were. Even Hanol was perplexed. This was completely different from the entrance Yin Soo-hyuk had described. Hanol's mind replayed Soo-hyuk's words. The entrance was supposed to be a vast meadow cleared by hunting weak creatures called pygmalets. As his confusion mounted, a system notification chimed through the air. "Welcome to the Lake of the Garden of Contemplation. Here is your mission." The hunters stared in disbelief. They hadn't entered at the beginning. They had been dropped directly into one of the dungeon's later stages. Another alert appeared, explaining their predicament. Too many pygmalets have been slaughtered. Now, the pygmalets have given up on moving. An image of a gruesome massacre filled their minds. Their new mission was clear: protect the remaining pygmalets from the slaughterers until nightfall. Success would grant them passage to the inner depths. Then came the consequence of failure, spelled out in blood-red, ominous text. Upon failure, all challengers will die. Panic erupted. Die! Guangsu shrieked, his composure shattering completely. The other hunters cried out in fear and confusion, unable to comprehend how a standard dungeon run had suddenly become a fight for their very lives. One of the hunters shouted for everyone to give up and forfeit, hoping to escape before the mission truly began. "He's right. Open your status windows and forfeit now," another yelled. But as Zhou Guangsu frantically tried to access the menu, a look of pure terror spread across his face. "I can't," he screamed, his voice trembling. "I've been trying to leave, but it won't let me. The status window isn't responding." Just as the horrifying realization that they were trapped set in, a new system alert pinged. "Current pygmalets remaining, 130. It was immediately followed by another. 2 pygmalets have perished at the hands of the slaughterer. A second after, the number dropped again, flashing in urgent red. Current pygmalets remaining, 128. The slaughter had already begun. As the hunters stood frozen in the desolate, skeletal forest, a chilling system alert pierced the silence. It was a countdown of lives, not seconds. Another alert followed immediately, its red text like a splash of fresh blood against the gloom, announcing that 2 of the helpless pygmalets had already been killed by something called the Slayer. The number of survivors ticked down, a grim reminder that their race against time had already begun with them at a disadvantage. Zhou Guangsu's face contorted in a mask of rage and fear. "Darn it! What in the world is going on?" he snarled, his authority useless in this life-or-death scenario. His desperate gaze fell upon Hanol, the only one who had remained unervingly calm. Guangsu stormed over, grabbing for any semblance of control. "Hey you," he barked. "Do you have any idea what's happening? Or anything about this lake?" Hanol met his frantic glare with a cool, collected smile that seemed entirely out of place. "Well, I'm not sure why this is happening either," he admitted, his voice steady. "But I do know about the lake." A collective sigh of relief swept through the terrified hunters. Guangsu's desperate expression shifted to one of pleading hope. "Thank goodness. Can you fill us in?" he urged, his pride momentarily forgotten. Guangsu quickly offered a deal, promising to help Hanol in return for the information. Hanol internally scoffed at the sudden change in attitude, recalling their previous condescension. Seeing his chance, he took control of the situation. "I have one condition," he announced, his voice echoing with newfound authority. "I'll share what I know, but you follow my orders until we clear this place. Deal?" He stood before them, an ultimatum hanging in the air. "Agree to that, and I'll tell you everything. Can you do that?" The weight of his demand settled on Guangsu, who stared in disbelief. The implication was clear. This unknown hunter was demanding absolute command over his elite guild members. It was a direct challenge to his authority, but with their lives on the line, his options were dwindling. Before Guangsu could argue, another horrifying notification flashed before their eyes. For more pygmalets had been brutally killed. The relentless pace of the slaughter sent a fresh wave of panic through the group, forcing Guangsu's hand. He grit his teeth, the bitter taste of surrender in his mouth. "Darn it, fine," he conceded, his voice tight with frustration. Guangsu tried to save face, adding a condition of his own. "But if this goes south, you're taking the fall." Hanol simply smiled. "That's a bit unfair. I clearly gave you a choice." he countered, turning the responsibility back onto the guild leader. Guangsu was left speechless, trapped by his own decision. With a defeated sigh, he finally relented. Fine, what's the plan? First, let me walk you through the terrain, Hanol began, crouching down. He picked up a nearby branch and began expertly sketching a detailed map in the dirt. This is the lake sector, he explained, his voice that of a seasoned commander. There's a massive lake in the center. Streams from all over the forest web together and feed directly into that lake. The hunters stared in awe at the intricate map, their skepticism turning to shock. How in the world do you know all this? Guangsu asked, pointing at the drawing. Hanol offered a simple, believable lie. I have a scouting skill. It lets me generate a map of the surroundings. The answer satisfied them, with Guangsu murmuring how incredible such a skill would be, never to be lost in a dungeon again. Hanol kept the truth to himself. It wasn't a skill, but a unique function of his new powers. A system notification confirmed he was accessing the Garden of Meditation map provided by the Lord's Castle of Illusions. This wasn't just a guess, it was perfect, preloaded intel. The layout matched exactly what Yinsu Hyuk had told him. We've got the map from the castle, he thought, so we're set. With the map established, Hanol outlined the objective. Our mission is simple. Save the pygmalets from the Slayer. That means we find them first. He pointed to specific locations on his hand-drawn map. They live in wetlands, so based on their habits, these 8 zones are their likely nesting grounds. His gaze hardened as a dark, menacing silhouette of the Slayer flashed in his mind. So, from now on, we beat the Slayer to them, he declared, already picturing himself sprinting through the woods with one of the small creatures, and herd them into one spot where they're easier to protect. That's the plan. Just as he finished, another system alert rang out, the death toll rising once more. The pygmalet count dropped to 121. Hanol's face was grim. If you understand, move out, he commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. They're dying while we're standing here. The other hunters flinched, the reality of the situation crashing down on them. Galvanized by his urgency, the group exploded into motion, west to south. Follow the watch rotation, Hanol yelled, directing them with precision. You know your spots. Move. The hunters, accustomed to following orders, executed the maneuver flawlessly. Guangsu watched for a moment, a bead of sweat on his brow, observing Hanol's unexpected but effective leadership. Guangsu turned to Hanol. And what are you going to do? He asked, his tone still laced with skepticism. I'm going to go look for the pygmalets on my own, Hanol replied, already turning to leave with a dismissive wave. As Hanol walked away, Guangsu scowled. Arrogant brat. Fine. See you later then. As the sounds of the other hunters faded, Hanol let out a sigh of relief. Phew, finally alone, he murmured. Dispatching the others was a necessary tactic, but his true purpose required him to operate solo. Another system message appeared, reminding him of his real goal. A hidden mission exists. Find the mission and claim your reward. His eyes narrowed with focus. Let's get started. Moving swiftly through the eerie woods, Hanol organized his thoughts. There are 2 things I need to figure out while scouting. First, the hidden mission, and second, his mind conjured the image of a grim reaper. The identity of the killers slaughtering the pygmalets. He knew now that they weren't the only inhabitants of this forest. Just what kind of creatures are they? He wondered. His senses suddenly flared, catching movement ahead. He ducked behind a tree just as a patrol of imposing figures marched into view. They were tall, muscular, reptilian humanoids clad in gold cloth and carrying heavy polearms. System identifiers floated above their heads. What the? Lizard men, he whispered, his eyes wide with surprise. From his hiding spot, the pieces clicked into place. Then the slaughterers killing the pygmalets. Are those fiends? The situation had just become far more dangerous. Things just got complicated, he thought, assessing the threat. Lizard men are only D rank, but in a pack like that, it's a different story. For now, I should avoid combat. Unseen by Hanol, 2 of Guangsu's men had already deserted their positions. Why in the world should I listen to that guy? One of them scoffed. I'm not working my tail off over orders from some nobody. The other agreed, laughing. They strolled carelessly through the woods, oblivious to the danger they were walking towards. Hanol spotted them and cursed under his breath. Darn it, why are they coming this way? The arrogant hunters ambled along, one of them drawing his blade idly. I thought I could just kill time here and leave, he mused. In that instant, a dark shape blurred from the trees. A flash of steel, a spray of blood, and a look of pure shock was all there was before a lizardman's blade sliced through the air, finding its mark with vicious speed. The attack was utterly overwhelming. The reptilian warrior leaped through the air, its powerful body a vessel of pure destruction. It brought its weapon down in a devastating arc, cleaving through the unprepared hunter. The second hunter was dispatched just as quickly, their arrogance costing them their lives as they fell to the forest floor in a heap. A third hunter, a large man with dreadlocks, witnessed the massacre of his comrades. He stared at the lizard man standing over their bodies, his face a mixture of shock and fury. "Hey, lizard man," he stammered in disbelief. Rage boiled over. "Inconceivable. You're just a measly D-rank monster. How dare you?" he roared, channeling lightning into his fists. He charged forward, a tempest of crackling energy. He was a high-ranking hunter, and he refused to be killed by a low-level creature. He unleashed a furious barrage of electrified blows, each punch landing with explosive force. "You're dead," he bellowed, determined to obliterate the monster that had humiliated his team. His final, empowered punch slammed directly into the lizardman's chest, creating a powerful shockwave. For a moment, he thought he had won, but the monster didn't even flinch. A blue system window materialized in front of the hunter, delivering a fatal piece of information. Lizardmen receive a swarm bonus. The hunter's eyes shot open in terror. Before he could process the new information, another system message appeared, sealing his fate. Lizardmen rank, D-Class, B-Class. Suddenly, he wasn't fighting one D-rank monster, but a pack of B-rank elites. The empowered lizardmen descended upon him, their claws and weapons tearing through his defenses as his screams were silenced. Hanol watched the brutal scene unfold from the shadows, the grim reality of the swarm bonus clear. He couldn't take on an entire pack of B-rank monsters by himself. But he wasn't by himself. Clenching his fist, he reached inward, tapping into the formidable power of his castle. An inferno of ethereal blue flames erupted around Hanol, and the very ground began to tremble. Out of the swirling energy, an imposing, armored warrior materialized, its body crackling with power and a malicious grin spreading across its face. A final system notification echoed in the clearing, announcing the arrival of his champion. Gono has been summoned. A shockwave of blue energy ripped through the clearing, obliterating the nearest lizardmen. From the swirling vortex of power, Gono materialized, a towering goblin warrior with glowing eyes and an aura of pure menace. He stood over the wounded Zhou Guangsu, his massive club resting on his shoulder, a silent and terrifying testament to Hanol's authority. Zhou Guangsu stared up in abject terror at the creature that had appeared from nowhere. "A goblin," he stammered, his mind struggling to process the impossible sight. This was no ordinary monster. It was a summoned being of immense power. Panic set in as he wondered where such a formidable ally could have possibly come from. Hanol walked calmly through the battlefield he had created, his footsteps silent amidst the chaos. He looked down at the trembling hunter with an air of disappointment. "I'm pretty sure I gave you a designated area to stay in," he said, his voice cold. Guangsu, clutching his bleeding arm, desperately tried to explain, stammering that it was all a misunderstanding and that he had simply taken a wrong turn. Hanol brushed off the pathetic excuse with a wave of his hand. "Whatever. I wasn't expecting much anyway," he said, adjusting his jacket. He had no time to waste on incompetence. "Get back and treat your wounds," he ordered, turning his attention to the remaining lizard men. "I'll handle things here." Stammering a quick "thank you," Zhou Guangsu scrambled to his feet and fled into the dark woods, not daring to look back. Hanol watched him go for a moment before turning back to the task at hand. Now, it was just him, his loyal subordinate, and a pack of B-rank monsters thirsting for blood. "We're low on time, Gono," Hanol stated, brushing a stray hair from his face. His expression was calm, betraying none of the pressure he was under. "Let's wrap this up quickly. We've got a quest to do." In response, Gono let out a guttural cry, "Karuk!" a sound filled with bloodlust and eagerness. At that moment, another enemy made its presence known. From the shadows emerged the Slaughterer, a monstrous, heavily armored lizard man, its red eyes glowing with murderous intent. With his target identified, Hanol's command was simple and absolute. "Wipe them all out." Gono answered with another fierce "Karuk" and exploded into action, charging toward the pack of elite lizard men. A system window materialized, announcing the activation of his skill, Raven's Wingbeat. Gono's body dissolved into a streak of ethereal blue and black energy, moving with impossible speed across the battlefield. He was a phantom of destruction, a living weapon unleashed upon its prey. The B-rank lizard men, powerful in their own right, could only watch as the blur of death closed the distance in an instant. Gono's attack was not a single strike, but a continuous storm of motion. The monster's eyes widened in shock, their primitive minds unable to comprehend the speed of their impending doom. Gono crashed into their ranks like a thunderbolt. He spun and slashed, his movements a deadly dance of blue light and shadow. Claws, blades, and armor were torn asunder as he carved a path of utter devastation through the pack, his every motion ending a life. The battle was a symphony of destruction. Each parry, each block, each strike from Gono was a concussive blast of energy. He moved with a grace that defied his brutish appearance, turning the clearing into a whirlwind of violence and azure light. A powerful lizard man swung its axe, but Gono met the blow head-on, shattering the weapon with a contemptuous strike of his club. He followed through with a devastating punch that sent the creature flying backward, its armor cracking under the immense force. With a final, ground-shattering slam of his club, the last of the lizard men was crushed into oblivion. Gono stood victorious amidst the carnage, the blue aura around him slowly dissipating, leaving only the silence of the dead. Hanol observed the one-sided slaughter with a detached calm. "This isn't even a fight," he thought to himself, a flicker of pride in his eyes. They're no match for him. After all, Gono was the same creature that had single-handedly taken down an ogre. These lizard men never stood a chance. Just as the dust settled, one of the hulking slaughterers broke away from the other hunters. It ignored the monstrous Gono and charged directly at Hanol, its weapon raised. Hanol's eyes widened slightly in surprise. "Huh? Is that lizard man coming for me?" The beast roared as it brought its massive polearm down, and a deadly arc. Hanol remained perfectly still, a wry thought crossing his mind. "Do I look like an easier target than Gono?" He gave a slight, internal shrug. "Well, I guess I do." At the last possible second, a system window flashed before his eyes, activating Lord's Afterimage. This unique skill allowed him to absorb the stats of the strongest monster from the previous wave. A torrent of fiery orange energy erupted around his fist as immense power surged through his body. The Slaughterer's blade slammed down, only to be met by Hanol's open palm. The impact sent a shockwave through the air, but his hand, now glowing with borrowed power, didn't move an inch. He had effortlessly stopped the B-rank monster's full-forced attack. He thought, if he hadn't had this skill, the outcome would have been drastically different. With a contemptuous clench of his fist, Hanol shattered the monster's weapon. He then drove his empowered fist forward, striking the Slaughterer with such cataclysmic force that it exploded on impact, leaving nothing but a bloody crater and splintered earth in its wake. The system confirmed the source of his newfound might. The stats of Count Guler, the formidable boss from the prior challenge, were temporarily added to his own. For the next 30 minutes, Hanol possessed power far beyond that of a normal human. His stats had skyrocketed to superhuman levels. Hanol examined his glowing fist, feeling the raw power thrumming within him. Just then, Gono padded over, covered in the spoils of his own victory, letting out a satisfied cry. "Gono," Hanol said, turning to his subordinate. "You're done too." Gono grinned, showing off his blood-soaked club with pride. Hanol smiled faintly and gave the goblin a congratulatory pat on the head. "Oh yeah, good job." He was still processing the speed and efficiency of his summoned warrior. Gono had wiped out an entire pack of B-rank monsters in mere moments. A pleasant notification chimed. Gono's affinity has increased by +10. Following that, Hanol liquidated the mana stones from the battle, earning a tidy 370 gold. More importantly, the system rewarded him with a premium gacha ticket for his first Lizardman Soul sale, a welcome bonus for his growing arsenal. "Oh, another gacha ticket?" Hanol mused. "I'll give it a spin once the mission's over." His thoughts were interrupted by Gono's insistent chirping. A system alert popped up, reminding him of the summon's time limit. He had only 7 minutes left, and losing his strongest ally now would be a serious problem. As if sensing his master's dilemma, Gono began gesturing wildly. A new system message appeared, offering a convenient, if costly, solution. You can pay gold to extend Gono's summon time. Cost: 5 gold per 10 minutes. Hanol sighed in resignation. "Seriously? This costs money too?" "No choice. I'll pay for the overtime." Gono let out a happy karuk as his time was extended. But just as they prepared to move on, a soft rustling sound came from the surrounding woods. Suddenly, dozens of small, pink, pig-like creatures, the pig mallets, emerged from the treeline, cautiously approaching them. The trickle of creatures quickly became a flood, and soon Hanol and Gono were completely surrounded by a sea of pink bodies. What they? Hanol muttered, stunned. "Where did all these pig mallets come from? This is bad. How am I supposed to move with all of them here?" Gono, however, seemed unfazed. He cleared his throat and let out a series of sharp, guttural barks at the pig mallets. Hanol watched in astonishment. "Oh, Gono, you can communicate with him?" he asked, a new level of respect for his subordinate dawning on him. Gono shouted one last, emphatic karuk, and the effect was immediate and bizarre. The pig mallets all burst into tears, their eyes sparkling with emotion as they swarmed around Hanol, nuzzling against his legs. What? He yelped, stumbling back. "What did you say to make them act like this?" Despite his confusion, the pig mallets now followed him with unwavering loyalty, forming a strange but effective protective escort. Hanol sighed, accepting the strange turn of events. "Well, I guess we've got no choice but to stick together for now. All right, let's finish scouting the area." They continued on, soon stumbling upon another gruesome scene of a battle already won. The bodies of lizard men were strewn across the ground, dispatched with brutal efficiency. Hanol nodded in approval. "Good job, Gono." Hanol reached for a mana stone from a fallen foe, but a red error message stopped him. The Lord's castle has run out of funds to purchase mana stones. A second notification followed, informing him he had also reached the unit limit for lizardman-type monsters in his army. He stared at the notifications, a thoughtful frown on his face. "I never thought the Lord's castle would actually run out of gold," he mused. The revelation of a unit cap was equally significant. With both limitations in place, hunting more lizard men had become a pointless endeavor. He quickly dismissed the issue, refocusing on his primary goal. Whatever, the mission was to save the pig mallets anyway. Looking at the sea of pink creatures around him, he did a quick head count. So far, I've saved about 60 of them. The system confirmed his estimate, displaying remaining pig mallets, 70. The number gave him pause. If he had 60, and there were 70 left in total, that meant the entire Bolgol Guild had only managed to rescue a paltry 10. He sighed at their incompetence. As he mulled over the thought, a strange flash of light in the distance caught his attention. Suddenly, Gono let out a frantic cry. The entire horde of pig mallets simultaneously took off at a full sprint, moving as one cohesive unit. Caught completely by surprise, Hanol was swept up in the stampede. "What, wait? Where are you guys going?" he yelled, struggling to keep his balance. The bizarre procession charged through the gloomy forest, moving with a singular, urgent purpose. Just as abruptly as it began, the stampede halted. Hanol caught his breath, steadying himself as he looked around the unfamiliar clearing. They finally stopped. "Where are we?" He realized they were standing at the bottom of a massive, dried-up lake bed. In the center lay a small, miraculously pristine spring. Across the clearing, he could see the other hunters from the Bulgol Guild, also surrounded by their small group of pig mallets. His eyes widened. The center of the lake. "Everyone else is here too," he murmured, a slow realization dawning on him. "Phew, they startled me when they started sprinting like maniacs." The pieces suddenly fell into place, and the implication was staggering. "Wait, does that mean the pig mallets let us all here?" As if on cue, a system notification appeared for all to see. "The slaughterers have stopped hunting the pig mallets. Night has fallen." As darkness enveloped the forest, the spring at the center of the lake erupted in a brilliant column of celestial light, revealing a magnificent, glowing tree at its heart. The system announced their victory. "Congratulations. You protected the pig mallets from a slayer. Mission complete." A bonus notification followed. Hidden objective met. Over 70 pig mallets survived. One of the other hunters let out a sigh of relief. "It's finally over. This blasted dungeon. Just let me out already." But it wasn't over. The serene spring water suddenly began to churn and swell, erupting into a violent torrent that engulfed the entire clearing. The other hunters screamed in panic, but Hanol's expression remained steady, his sharp eyes focused and analytical. He understood this was no simple exit portal. As the swirling water enveloped them, a final, chilling message from the system filled their minds, heralding the true nature of their trial. It was not a simple rescue mission, it was a test, and the next phase was about to begin. The trial of meditation begins now. As the final words of the system echoed, the supposed trial's true nature was revealed. The trial of meditation begins now. The tranquil water of the spring suddenly erupted into a violent, churning maelstrom. It swallowed the clearing whole, catching the unprepared hunters off guard and sweeping them away in a ferocious current, their screams of terror lost in the roar of the deluge. Hanol braced himself, the sheer force of the water threatening to tear him from his feet. He knew he couldn't possibly dodge a flood of this magnitude. But just as the wave was about to crash over him, a swarm of small, glowing figures shot through the water, surrounding him in a protective embrace. To his astonishment, it was the pig mallets he had saved. The creatures coalesced, their individual lights merging into a brilliant, golden shield. This ethereal barrier formed a protective dome around Hanol and Gono, holding the raging torrent at bay. Hanol stared in disbelief. The weak, helpless creatures he had rescued were now protecting him from certain death. A series of system notifications clarified the unbelievable event. The pig mallets, saved from the slaughterer, were expressing their gratitude. In this trial, their very lives were now dedicated to protecting their savior. Their combined will formed a massive, shimmering shield that stood unyielding against the flood. The system then issued a new directive, the true objective of the trial. They were to endure for 10 minutes, relying on the strength of the souls they had gathered. A timer materialized in the air, its stark numbers beginning their slow, inexorable descent from 10 o'clock. A sudden, profound understanding washed over Hanol. He had never imagined the pig mallets possessed such a latent power. Now, it was all clear. This was the hidden reason he was compelled to save them. The survival of these creatures was directly tied to his own. He pieced together the mechanics of the trial. It was a test of heart, of compassion. The more pig mallets he saved, the stronger his shield became. A cold dread crept into his heart as he looked out at the other hunters. What about them? What about those who had shown no mercy? His gaze fell upon Zhou Guangsu. The man had only bothered to save a single pig mallet, and now he was paying the price. His lone protector struggled valiantly, but its tiny shield flickered and buckled under the immense pressure of the current. He was barely holding on. As the timer ticked down, Hanol saw that Guangsu's predicament was not unique. The other hunters, with their meager handfuls of rescued pig mallets, were all in the same desperate situation. Their small shields were failing, and time was rapidly running out. The grim reality was undeniable. If saving the pig mallets was the only path to survival, then everyone except him was in grave danger. He had to find a way to intervene, but how? As he grappled with this impossible problem, a new alert chimed, offering a sliver of hope. Hidden mission discovered. The mission was clear: find and defeat the monster that was the source of the trial. Hanol's mind raced back to the intel from his lord's castle, which spoke of a hidden mission within the lake. He had scoured the fields for nothing. The key to ending this nightmare was submerged in the very waters that sought to destroy them. With a renewed sense of purpose, Hanol decided to act. He still had 2 uses of his Sage's Eye skill for the day. Raising a hand to his temple, he focused his will, determined to unmask the foul creature responsible for this deadly trial. It was time to find his prey. The system confirmed a target was within range and prompted him for activation. "Okay, found you," Hanol thought, a confident smile spreading across his face as his glasses glowed with analytical light. He activated the skill without a moment's hesitation, peering deep into the heart of the storm. The results of the scan were staggering. The source of the trial was Zen Kuruk, a named monster. Hanol's confidence wavered. Named monsters were not ordinary beasts. They were unique, powerful entities that operated on a completely different level from their common counterparts. This was no mere lizard man. Zen Kuruk was an elite mage, armed with unique skills and items that granted it immense power. Hanol clenched his fists, realizing the daunting scale of the challenge before him. He should have known a hidden mission would never be this easy. Gono let out a fearsome growl, ready to charge into battle, but Hanol held him back. His goblin champion had no resistance to water, making a direct assault in the raging lake suicidal. A new strategy was needed, one that didn't rely on brute force alone. An idea sparked in his mind. Now was the time to expand his forces. Activating his Lord's List trade, he brought up the catalog of monsters available for purchase. With a substantial 850 G in his reserves, he prepared to summon a new warrior to his side. He quickly found what he was looking for, the Ogre Berserker. Costing 420 G, it possessed the crucial water resistance needed for this fight. But he knew its base stats alone wouldn't be enough to challenge a named monster, not without a powerful item to augment its strength. His eyes fell on the single premium gacha ticket in his inventory. It was a long shot, but it was his only shot. He decided to bet everything on this one draw, praying for an item that could turn the tide. With a surge of determination, he used the ticket. The system consumed the ticket, and the space before him erupted in a blinding, golden light. Hanol's breath caught in his throat. Golden light, that could only mean one thing. The item he had just drawn was S rank, the highest tier of rarity imaginable. His elation was short-lived as the silhouette of the item left him bewildered. At the same moment, the current intensified dramatically, the protective shields of the other hunters beginning to shatter. There was no more time for hesitation or second-guessing. Casting his doubts aside, Hanol paid the 420 G and summoned his new ally. A vortex of energy swirled, and from it emerged a hulking ogre berserker, letting out a ground-shaking roar as it materialized, club in hand. "It's an S-rank item. It's gotta be good. Just put it on, ogre," he yelled. A flash of light confirmed the equipment transfer, but instead of powering up, the newly summoned ogre collapsed to the ground, motionless. Hanol stared, dumbfounded. Did something go wrong? While Hanol was reeling from the unexpected failure, the amplified current claimed its first victim. A hunter's screams were cut short as his shield disintegrated, and he was swept away. The shockwave of the impact slammed against Hanol's own barrier, sending a tremor through him. With the ogre out of commission and the other hunters being picked off, Hanol knew he was out of options. "I'll have to handle this myself," he snarled, activating his ultimate skill, Lord's Afterimage. He would absorb the power of his strongest monster and face the enemy head-on. An inferno of red and blue energy enveloped him as immense power flooded his veins. He plunged into the heart of the torrent, pushing forward against a force that felt like a collapsing mountain. Even with his amplified strength, the current was too much to handle. "I can't hold on anymore," he gasped, his grip failing. His strength gave out, his body succumbing to the overwhelming force. As despair set in, he felt an impossible shift. The current was weakening. He looked up, bewildered, a glimmer of hope piercing through the chaos. What was happening? A colossal figure stood before him, its sheer presence parting the violent waters. It was the ogre, now standing tall and inexplicably wearing a pointed wizard's hat. It turned to him, its voice calm and articulate, a stark contrast to its brutish appearance. "My lord, are you unharmed?" The ogre then did something Hanul never could have predicted. It bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect and loyalty. "Forgive my late greeting," it intoned. "Your humble servant stands before the King of Kings." Hanul was speechless, his mind struggling to process the scene. The system then revealed the truth. The S-rank item was Archmage Gandorf's hat, a relic that grants +30 intelligence, capable of turning a simple-minded beast into a sagacious genius. In his moment of desperation, Hanul hadn't just summoned a monster. He had created an entirely new, impossibly powerful being. Hanul stared, his mind reeling from the ogre's articulate greeting. "Servant," he thought, pushing aside the initial shock of being addressed as "my lord." The more pressing question burned in his mind, a question he couldn't stop himself from shouting. "How are you able to speak?" Ogres were known for their brutish strength, not their grasp of language. This was an unprecedented, impossible event. The ogre, still bowing, answered with a voice full of newfound wisdom. "It is thanks to the grace you have bestowed upon me, my liege. Thanks to this hat, I have been reborn." It straightened up, its massive form radiating not just power, but a startling intelligence. With a fist to its chest in a gesture of absolute fealty, it declared, "Therefore, my liege, please, just give this servant your command." A slow smile spread across Hanul's face as the implications crashed down on him. He knew the hat increased intelligence, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. An ogre, a creature of pure instinct, was not just speaking, but communicating complex thoughts. He recalled the moment the ogre blocked the torrential water, realizing this transformation was more than just cognitive. It was a fundamental change in its very being. Stepping forward, Hanul decided to test the limits of this new evolution. "I have one thing to ask before I give you a command," he stated, his voice calm and measured. The ogre awaited his words with rapt attention. "Can you use magic by any chance?" The ogre confirmed his suspicion without hesitation, explaining that it had indeed used an enchantment on the log to block the water stream, solidifying its new identity as a magical being. With his trump card confirmed, Hanul's strategy began to form. "All right, Ogre Berserker," he began, his voice ringing with authority. "This is your first command." He pointed towards the heart of the swirling vortex. "Pierce through this storm and advance to the center. I'll follow right behind you." The ogre's eyes lit up with fierce devotion. With a roar of assent, it hefted its log like a divine weapon and charged, parting the violent waters with sheer, enchanted force. As they advanced, Hanul watched the magic-infused log effortlessly repel the churning waters. A sense of confidence washed over him. "Yeah, I believe in you, Odolph," he said, giving the creature a name born of its nature and its magical gift. The ogre stopped, stunned, the name echoing in its newfound consciousness. A tear formed in its eye as it was overcome with emotion, having been given not just intelligence, but an identity by its master. Fueled by this profound act of grace, Odolph let out a thunderous roar, a vow of absolute loyalty that shook the very foundations of the trial. "I shall dedicate my life to repay this grace," he bellowed, red energy crackling around his empowered form. With renewed purpose, they surged forward at an incredible speed, carving a path directly through the lake's defenses. Hanul's mind was clear. At this rate, they would face the named monster in moments. Deep within the tempest, a reptilian mage known as Jin Karak felt the disturbance. An intruder was piercing his water magic with alarming ease. Recognizing the threat, he raised his skull-topped staff, channeling his mana into a formidable defense. A shimmering, hexagonal barrier of pure energy materialized, a magical wall he believed to be impenetrable. Their charge came to an abrupt halt before the shimmering barrier. Odolf, using his new intellect, identified it as a special form of defensive magic. Hanal, however, had a different approach. Ignoring Odolf's complex magical analysis, he gave a simple, direct order. Who said anything about using magic? Just try breaking it with sheer strength first. Though hesitant, Odolf's loyalty was absolute, and he prepared to shatter the wall with pure, unadulterated power. The first impact sent shudders through the barrier, alerting the confident mage. They must be mages, Jin Karak reasoned, but they are fools to challenge this. He sneered, knowing his wave of cataclysm was a special construct. It could only be breached by a simultaneous application of overwhelming physical force and high-level magic, a combination he believed no single being could possess. Odolf, however, was no ordinary being. He struck the barrier again and again, each blow infused with his monstrous strength. Hanal urged him on, comparing the barrier to bulletproof glass that would shatter under focused, repeated assault. The mage's confidence turned to disbelief as spiderweb cracks appeared on his invincible shield, the impossible sight sending a jolt of panic through him. With a final, earth-shattering blow, the barrier exploded into a shower of light and energy. Jin Karak stared in horror, his mind struggling to comprehend the scene. The logic was undeniable, yet impossible. A mage, even a powerful one, should not possess such physical might. In that moment of shattering glass and broken logic, the mage understood the terrifying truth. His opponent's strength was on par with an ogre's. Odolf stepped calmly through the breach, his massive form exuding an aura of invincibility. He turned to Hanal, his voice filled with genuine admiration for his master's foresight. "The insight of the king of 10,000 men never fails to leave me in awe," he declared. Hanal gave a simple nod of approval. "You did well, Odolf." Jin Karak watched them emerge from the ruins of his ultimate defense, his mind racing. An ogre with the strength to shatter his barrier, and the magic to bypass its properties. A dreadful conclusion dawned upon him. "Is that guy an ogre shaman?" he whispered in awe and terror. As Hanal called out his name, Jin Karak accepted the reality of this unexpected variable, but steeled himself, convinced this was where their luck would run out. Believing his foe must have exhausted their mana reserves breaking the barrier, Jin Karak decided to seize the advantage. "My mana is still overflowing," he snarled, gathering the churning waters of the lake around him. Power surged from his staff as he unleashed his most powerful spell, a torrent of destructive energy meant to overwhelm and obliterate his opponents once and for all. Odolf immediately recognized the danger, warning Hanal that the enemy's attack was too powerful to block directly. Yet, Hanal remained unfazed. He issued his next command with chilling composure. "Odolf, can you use a long-range magic attack to keep him in check from here? Just enough to stop him from casting." Without a moment's hesitation, Odolf accepted the command, ready to unleash his own power. Hanal watched as Odolf's fists became wreathed in roaring flames, preparing to charge in the moment his servant's magic was unleashed. But his plan was instantly shattered by the sheer spectacle of what happened next. With a concussive blast, Odolf launched not a simple spell, but a blazing projectile that tore through the air with the speed of a meteor. Hanal could only stare in shock as the attack crossed the distance in the blink of an eye. Jin Karak sneered, having anticipated a magical interruption. As the fiery projectile closed in, he erected a secondary defensive spell, a swirling shield of water he was certain no magic could pierce. But his confidence turned to pure terror as the attack slammed into his shield and tore through it, as if it were paper, continuing its trajectory without losing an ounce of momentum. The world dissolved into fire and light. In his final moments, Jin Karak couldn't comprehend the force that was unmaking him. It felt less like magic and more like a physical cataclysm. As the explosion consumed him, his last, lingering thought was a question. What kind of power was this? The clearing fell silent, the violent waters calmed by the sheer force of the blast. Hanal and Odolf stood in the now tranquil clearing, the only evidence of the battle being a smoldering crater. Looking down, Hanol saw the bloody, splintered remains of a massive log. That wasn't magic, was it? He asked wryly. Odolf sheepishly admitted he had yet to learn any proper magic formulas. He had simply thrown the log. Hanol could only sigh. A win was a win. Far away, in the pristine office of a modern skyscraper, a woman slammed her hands on a desk in frustration. Kungwu, I'm telling you it's real. We absolutely have to catch him, she insisted. Sitting with his back to her, the legendary S-rank hunter and Pungbeak guild master, Choi Kangwoo, gazed out at the city below. His eyes, sharp and ancient, narrowed with profound interest. That hunter's name, did you say it was Kim Hanol? In the silent, debris-strewn clearing, Hanol let out a slow, controlled breath, the tension of battle finally leaving him. The waters had calmed, the enemy was gone, and an eerie peace had settled over the trial grounds. With the immediate threat neutralized, he stood alone, his thoughts turning to the next logical step. Phew, anyway, he murmured to himself, his gaze sweeping across the desolate landscape. Does this mean we're done here? Odolf, his newly intelligent ogre servant, stepped forward with a respectful nod. Yes, my lord, he confirmed, his deep voice resonating with newfound clarity. He then opened his massive palm, revealing a brilliantly glowing blue crystal pulsing with raw energy. Here, I found the item you need, my lord. Hanol took the crystal, a faint smile touching his lips. Yeah, thanks to you, Odolf, it was an easy finish. Odolf, however, humbly shook his head, refusing the praise. Not at all. It is all thanks to your insight, my lord. Hanol scoffed lightly, dismissing the flattery with a wave. Such formalities could wait. There were more practical matters to attend to. Insight, my foot. Come on, let's take care of the mana stones first. As Hanol made his decision, a cascade of system notifications flooded his vision. He had sold the special soul stone from Jin Karuk, and the rewards from his monarch's castle were now being distributed. A treasure chest materialized in a flash of light, spilling forth its contents. One special space development ticket, one premium draw ticket, and a promise of 4,000 gold, which would be delivered later due to his castle's current financial situation. But the most significant reward was yet to come. A new alert detailed the fate of his vanquished foe, named Monster Jin Karuk, is added to the monarch's castle. The powerful water mage, with its high intelligence and devastating skills, was now his to command. He had not merely defeated an enemy, he had claimed it, adding a formidable new asset to his growing arsenal, deployable for future wave defenses. Hanol decided to analyze the full extent of his gains later. For now, it was time to leave this isolated battlefield. Let's head back for now, he said, turning to walk away. Odolf followed without question, his loyalty absolute. They returned to the tranquil forest clearing where the trial had first begun, the air still and quiet. As they emerged, a blue-haired female hunter approached, her expression a mixture of relief and awe. I'm glad to see everyone is safe, she began, then her eyes fixed on him. Huh? Hunter Hanol. She recounted how they had barely survived the raging torrents before the water suddenly stopped. Hesitantly, she asked the question on everyone's mind. Did you do this? Hanol simply nodded. Yes, I took down the monster causing it. It's all over now, so you can relax. The woman bowed deeply, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. Wow, thank you so much. Hunter Hanol saved us. He accepted her thanks with a calm demeanor, his focus already shifting to the well-being of the group. It was nothing. How are the other hunters doing? She gestured towards the clearing, where the other raid members were scattered, bruised, and exhausted but alive. They're safe. She explained that they had immediately gathered and treated the wounded once the storm subsided. Just as she finished, a figure rose from among the fallen hunters. It was the bald, arrogant guild leader, his face unreadable. He called out Hanol's name, his voice low and serious, and began to approach, grabbing Hanol's arm to stop him. Hold on, let me talk to you for a second. The female hunter gasped, recognizing him as her guild leader. Hanol tensed, his mind racing. What was this guy's problem now? Was he really trying to pick another fight? Even after everything that had happened, Hanol braced himself for a confrontation, his patience wearing thin. But the expected aggression never came. Instead, the guild leader did something that left Hanol utterly speechless. He fell to his knees, performing a full, ground-touching bow. Thank you so much," he cried out, his voice choked with emotion. "I am truly sorry for my rudeness earlier. Thank you so much for saving my guild members." Hanol stared, taken aback by the sincere, humbling apology. It was the last thing he'd expected from the prideful man. Reaching down, he offered a hand to help him up. "It's all right, guild leader," he said, his voice softening. "Please, get up. You need to take care of your guild members." The guild leader looked up, his eyes welling with tears of gratitude. He clasped Hanol's hand firmly, his voice thick with resolve. "Hanol, thank you. I will definitely repay this debt." In that moment, the animosity between them dissolved, replaced by a profound and unexpected respect. A system alert chimed, announcing the end of their ordeal. "Congratulations. You have overcome the trial of contemplation." Rewards were to be distributed, and a choice was presented: an early exit or advancement to the upper levels. For the exhausted hunters, the decision was simple. "I can finally leave this place." One sighed, his relief palpable. The guild leader turned to Hanol, his newfound respect evident. "What are you going to do, Hunter Hanol?" Without hesitation, Hanol's gaze hardened with purpose. "I plan to stay here. I still have things left to do." The guild leader's eyes widened in alarm. "What? By yourself?" He argued passionately against it, insisting on the danger. "No matter how strong you are, it's dangerous to go alone. How about you exit with us first and regroup? After that, we'll do our best to help you. So let's go together." Hanol gave a small, appreciative smile, but shook his head. "I appreciate the offer, but—" As Hanol declined, two imposing figures shimmered into existence behind him. The sagacious ogre, Odolf, and the demonic knight, Gono, stood ready. Odolf hefted his massive log, a weapon of pure, brutal force. Hanol turned back to the stunned hunter, a confident smirk on his face. "I have a reliable companion of my own." The guild leader froze, his face paling as he took in the sight of the hulking ogre and the armored warrior. The sheer pressure radiating from them was suffocating. "An ogre?" he stammered, his mind struggling to comprehend the power at Hanol's command. Realizing how out of his depth he was, he quickly and awkwardly retracted his offer. I see. You clearly don't need our help, so we'll be going now." He and the female hunter hastily backed away, their retreat almost comical. Hanol watched them go, a dry thought crossing his mind. They must be shocked. Odolf's appearance is pretty intense, after all. A final system ping confirmed their departure, processing the dungeon exits for all remaining challengers. As the other hunters were enveloped in pillars of blue light, they shouted their final goodbyes. "Thank you so much for everything, Hunter Hanol," one called out. "Please be careful," another yelled. In a flash, they were gone, leaving Hanol, Odolf, and Gono alone in the silent, empty trial grounds. Hanol let out a breath, finally alone. Now then, just as he was about to plan his next move, another system message appeared. "Congratulations. You have completed the hidden mission Subdue the Source of the Trial. A special reward was promised." A sly smile spread across his face. This was what he had stayed for. Should I check out the hidden mission reward? Far away, in the top office of a gleaming skyscraper, a serious discussion was underway. A stern, silver-haired man sat behind a massive desk, listening to his subordinate's report. "So what you're saying is, we absolutely have to recruit this hunter named Kim Hanol." The subordinate nodded emphatically. "Yes, from what I saw, his potential is incredible." He suggested the guild master handle it personally, but the request was immediately denied. "We are the Pungbik Guild," the master declared, his voice laced with arrogance. "Known as the best among the top 3 guilds. We don't make the first move for some rookie with a bit of potential." He continued, dismissing the idea entirely. "We already have more than enough on our plate to deal with. We don't have time to waste on a mere B-rank hunter." So, his speech was cut short by a shrill alarm from his phone. He snatched it up, his eyes widening at the bright red screen. Emergency disaster alert. Red pattern dungeon outbreak. An emergency disaster alert was the highest level of warning, signaling a catastrophe in the making. He quickly scanned the details, his composed facade cracking as he read the location. A chill ran down his spine, and his face contorted in disbelief. This is the Garden of Contemplation. Outside the affected building, chaos reigned. A command post had been hastily assembled as agents scrambled to manage the crisis. "The civilian evacuation has been completed safely," one shouted. Another confirmed they were interviewing survivors for intel. In the midst of the turmoil, the Pungbik Guild Master and his team arrived, striding onto the scene with grim authority. An agent immediately briefed them. "You're here, Guild Leader. A few moments ago, we observed the Garden of Contemplation shifting to a red pattern." He explained that this signaled an impending dungeon break, a disastrous event where monsters pour into the real world. "We asked the Pungbik Guild to handle the response in case of an emergency." One of the guild members interrupted, concerned. "Hold on, what about the hunters currently raiding it?" The agent's face was grim. "Well, we've confirmed that 6 people made it out. However, we were told 1 person remained inside." He lowered his voice, delivering the most shocking piece of information. "They most likely entered the depths." The Pungbik leader was stunned. "Are you certain? You're saying a hunter entered the depths?" Before he could process the absurdity of the claim, a new powerhouse arrived. A massively built man with an intimidating presence strode toward them. A system window announced his identity: Aegis Guild Leader, S-Rank Ma Dongpao. Ma Dongpao wasted no time with pleasantries. "It's been a while, Aegis Guild Leader. How have you been?" The Pungbik leader greeted. The S-Ranker cut straight to the chase. "Anyway, what do you think about what they just said? About the hunter who entered the depths?" He leveled a knowing look at his rival. "You think the dungeon changed because of that hunter, right?" Before the Pungbik leader could answer, a third, equally powerful aura descended on the scene. A woman with long dark hair and an imperious gaze walked toward them, red energy swirling at her feet. The leaders of Korea's top 3 guilds were now assembled. It was the Saniri Guild leader, the S-Rank Huntress Saniri. Ma Dongpao turned to the newcomer. "You're here just in time. Saniri Guild leader, you also think that's the reason for the red pattern, right?" She met his gaze coolly. "Yes, wouldn't you say it's highly likely?" she responded, her logic undeniable. "There hasn't been a single hunter who's entered the depths until now." The Pungbik leader's brow furrowed, forced to agree. That is definitely the most plausible explanation. But who on earth entered the depths? As if on cue, an agent sprinted towards them, shouting over the noise. "We've secured information on the unreturned hunter." All 3 S-rank guild leaders turned, their full attention on the agent. According to the survivors, he began, his voice tense, the unreturned hunter remaining in the dungeon, headed for the garden's depths as expected, and we just confirmed their name. He took a deep breath. "That hunter is..." The agent made his final, world-shattering report. Hunter Kim Hanol. The name echoed in the Pungbik guild leader's mind. His eyes widened in horrified realization. The mere B-rank rookie he had dismissed moments ago was the very person who had single-handedly triggered a national-level disaster, forcing the country's 3 strongest hunters to assemble. At the dungeon's entrance, the 3 S-rank guild leaders absorbed the agent's report. The name echoed in the tense air, a name that shifted the balance of power and understanding in an instant. It was Hunter Kim Hanol. The Pungbik guild leader's eyes widened, a storm of disbelief and dawning horror washing over him. The rookie he had so easily dismissed was the very cause of this national-level alert. A memory surfaced in the Pungbik leader's mind. Kim Hanol. That's the hunter Su Hyuk mentioned. The connection clicked into place, adding another layer of complexity to the unfolding mystery. Beside him, the elegant yet formidable female guild leader couldn't suppress a smirk. Things are taking an interesting turn, aren't they? This was no longer a simple incident. It was becoming a spectacle. The third leader, a man of immense physical presence, cracked his knuckles, a predatory grin spreading across his face. "This is fun," he mused, his voice a low rumble. If that guy actually manages to break through the deepest part and make it back alive. His eyes gleamed with anticipation. We'll have an unprecedented rookie on our hands. Meanwhile, blissfully unaware of the chaos he'd caused, Hanol stood in the tranquil aftermath of his last battle. He took a deep breath, studying his mind for the final challenge ahead. Then first things first, he decided, a calm smile on his face. Let's sort out the hidden mission rewards before heading into the deepest part. With a thought, a holographic system window materialized before him. He tapped Check Rewards, and a cascade of notifications filled the screen. His stats were boosted significantly, but the true prize was the hidden mission reward, the High Priest's Dimensional Pouch. An A-grade item, this pouch was a pocket dimension capable of holding up to 100 kilograms and, to his surprise, already contained a bounty of valuable monster byproducts. Hanol's eyes scanned the details, a look of genuine satisfaction on his face. This is a pretty sweet haul, isn't it? He murmured to himself. An item that solved all his inventory problems was more valuable than any weapon at this stage. He knew with certainty that this dimensional pouch would be indispensable in his future endeavors. But there was one more reward. A special space development ticket hovered in the air. Hanol's mind immediately connected it to his unique ability. Looks like something I can use in the monarch's castle, he deduced, his strategic mind already calculating its potential. Deciding to explore its function later, he dismissed the reward screen, his focus shifting to the ultimate goal. Let's head into the deepest part now. As if answering his will, a system message chimed. The gate to the deepest part has opened. Hanol turned to his loyal summons. Everyone ready? The mighty ogre, Gono, gave a firm nod. Yes, my liege. Hanol scanned the area, ready to proceed, but paused in confusion. All right, let's get started, huh? Why can't I see the gate? Suddenly, a cheerful squeal cut through the air. A small, round pig mallet, one of the creatures he had saved, trotted up to them, its eyes sparkling. It seemed eager, beckoning them forward. Hanol turned to his sagacious ogre. Gono, they want us to follow them, right? Gono simply grunted in agreement, understanding the creature's intent. The pig mallet led them on a determined path through the woods, soon joined by the rest of its herd. To Hanol's surprise, they weren't leading him to a cave or a clearing, but directly toward a large, serene lake. He watched, perplexed, as the entire herd of pig mallets leaped into the water without hesitation. A shocking realization dawned on him. Wait, is the gate inside the lake? I've never seen a gate underwater before. Trusting the strange guidance, Hanol made his decision. With a determined shout, he and his summons charged forward, following the pig mallet's lead. They launched themselves off the bank, soaring through the air for a brief moment before plunging into the cold, clear water below. They sliced through the surface, the world dissolving into a realm of blue and bubbles. Below them, the herd of pig mallets swam gracefully, forming a trail that led deeper into the aquatic abyss. Hanol and his companions followed, descending toward an unknown destination hidden in the depths of the lake. As they descended, Hanol's eyes widened in amazement. A shimmering, ethereal light pulsed from the lake bed, a swirling vortex of energy. Oh, there really is a gate underwater, he thought, a sense of relief washing over him. If they hadn't showed us, we would have wandered around forever. The pig mallets squealed happily, circling the gate as if to say farewell. With a grateful nod to his small guides, Hanol offered a final word. Thanks, guys. Take care. See you next time. He then turned and, followed by Gono and Kiruk, swam directly into the heart of the glowing portal. As the light enveloped him, his thoughts turned serious. Finally, the deepest part. The passage through the gate was disorienting, and in the swirling void, Hanol's mind drifted back to a crucial phone call with Yoon Soo-hyuk. He remembered Soo-hyuk's disbelief. Are you saying you plan to challenge the deepest part? Hanol had been resolute, but Soo-hyuk's reason for abandoning the challenge was chilling. That place is where my constellation warned me not to go. Soo-hyuk's voice echoed in his memory, filled with a gravity that Hanol now fully appreciated. If a constellation went out of its way to warn me, You can imagine how dangerous it is. That place could be far more dangerous than anyone expects. Even a being of immense power had been told to stay away. The weight of that warning settled upon Hanol as he crossed the threshold. Hanol's face was grim, his resolve hardening into steel. The warning of a literal god was not something to be taken lightly. This time, I really might have to put my life on the line. He pushed through the final layer of the portal as a system message announced his arrival. The challenger is entering the deepest part. He burst through the gate not into darkness, but into a blinding, brilliant light. The sun shone down from a clear blue sky. It was a complete sensory shock, the opposite of the hellscape he had braced himself for. As his vision adjusted, a goblin face appeared inches from his own, staring at him with wide, curious eyes. Startled, Hanol let out a yelp and scrambled backward, landing clumsily on the soft grass. Gono and Kiruk looked down at him, confused by his sudden outburst. He let out a shaky breath, placing a hand over his heart. "Ah, you scared me. It was just you, Gono." He pushed himself up, trying to clear his head. "Did I pass out for a second while going through the gate?" As he got to his feet, the reality of his surroundings finally sank in. A vast, verdant plain stretched out before him, filled with life and bathed in warm sunlight. His confusion was palpable. "Wait a minute. Does that mean this is the deepest part?" he exclaimed, looking around at the peaceful landscape. This idyllic scene was not what he, or anyone, would have ever expected. A new series of system notifications appeared, confirming his location. "Garden of Meditation, the deepest part. Welcome to the garden." The message continued, laying out the parameters of his trial. In a world dying from drought, this garden was the last paradise, and countless invaders were coming to claim it. His mission: protect this final sanctuary. The instructions were clear: alter the structure of the garden and use its abilities to fend off the incoming invasions. As Hanol processed the words, a flash of recognition lit up his eyes. He knew this format. "Wait a minute, this is exactly like the same defense format as MBM. The trial was modeled after the very game that gave him his Monarch's Castle ability." Just as the realization hit him, a surge of familiar blue energy erupted around him. The Monarch's Castle is intervening in the garden. His own power was synchronizing with the dungeon's trial. A new holographic interface projected itself into the air. The Monarch's Castle has provided a bird's-eye view of the garden. A detailed map of the entire area materialized, its layout uncannily similar to his own castle's design. This was his home turf. A confident, almost predatory smile spread across Hanol's face as he pushed a pair of glasses onto his nose. "If the mission is a defense game," he declared, his voice filled with absolute certainty, "I'm more than confident." The system prompted him to begin preparations for the first wave of monsters. "All right, first." Hanol's eyes glowed as he activated his Sage's Eye skill, allowing him to perceive the flow of mana and analyze his assets. "Let's see what kind of forces I have to work with." His enhanced vision revealed the garden's special structures. The first was the World Tree's grass wall, a massive barrier of parasitic vines embedded with the roots of the World Tree itself. It was a living fortress designed to emit a powerful mana field to block any monster's advance. Next, he saw the Ari Tree of Charm and Tears, a beautiful, cherry blossom-like tree. Its description revealed a potent defensive ability. It scattered pollen that could charm approaching monsters, rendering them immobile for a full 5 minutes, making them easy targets. Finally, his gaze fell upon the most aggressive of the defenses, the carnivorous plant Zyra. These towering, Venus flytrap-like monstrosities were programmed to devour any monster that came within a 1-meter radius, trapping them in their roots to suffer an eternal demise. The garden's defenses were as deadly as they were beautiful. Hanol surveyed his botanical army with a low whistle of appreciation. "These are pretty formidable forces, aren't they?" he remarked. He was so impressed, in fact, that he casually patted one of the Zyra plants, wondering if he could take one home. The system immediately shut him down. The Guardian cannot arbitrarily damage the garden. He clicked his tongue. "TCH, what a shame." Just as he was about to begin placing his defenses, a new alert flashed. The presence of an A-rank or higher monster is detected. Hanol tensed, scanning the peaceful clearing. An A-rank monster? I don't see anything. Oh, his attention was drawn to a faint, shimmering distortion in the air, a spot of reality that seemed to wobble like a heat haze. His instinct screaming, Hanol lunged forward and snatched the shimmering spot out of the air. His hand closed around something small, soft, and slightly squishy. Without his glasses, he would have missed it completely. The object pulsed with a faint purple light in his palm. What exactly are you? He wondered aloud. His sage's eye provided the answer. A data panel identified the creature as Beholder Sage, a named monster. Its stats were impossible to analyze, but it possessed two skills: snooping, an advanced camouflage and detection ability, and baby petrification, a low-level movement restriction skill. Hanol poked the tiny, one-eyed creature. This is a beholder? The ones I know are supposed to be huge. Is it not fully grown yet? Realizing the immense value of a tameable named monster, he made a quick decision. Well, it's still useful. Gono, take care of it. Let's send it to the monarch's castle. But as he prepared to transport the creature, the very atmosphere cracked with oppressive energy. A terrifying system message seared itself into his mind, its authority absolute. An unknown constellation demands the Beholder Sage's freedom. Hanol froze, his blood running cold. Before he could even process the shock, the pressure intensified, and the voice boomed again, naming itself. The constellation Gardener of the Mother Goddess yells at you once more to release the Beholder. A constellation? The word echoed in Hanol's mind, carrying the weight of a god. These beings were the architects of reality, entities of immense power, and one was now speaking directly to him. The oppressive purple energy swirling around him felt like a cage, an undeniable pressure from a higher power. He clutched the tiny, one-eyed creature, his mind racing to understand the implications of this celestial intervention. A sudden realization dawned on him as his thoughts connected the dots. Don't tell me. Are they the one managing this dungeon? It was the only plausible explanation. He recalled the incessant messages that plagued Yoon Soo-hyuk, desperate attempts by another constellation to intervene in his affairs. This entity, the Gardener of the Mother Goddess, had to be the overseer of this strange and dangerous realm. The system message flared again, the voice of the constellation booming with impatience and startling him. The Gardener of the Mother Goddess yells at you once again. Hanol quickly regained his composure, a sly smirk gracing his lips as he studied the quivering Beholder Sage in his hand. He didn't know the exact reason for this intervention, but one thing was crystal clear. This powerful being was desperate to get its little pet back. An opportunity presented itself, a golden chance to negotiate with a god, and Hanol was not one to let it pass. "Oh, great constellation," he began, his voice dripping with false reverence. "Is this little guy precious to you by any chance?" The system confirmed his suspicion, urging him to release the creature. "Oh, is that so?" Hanol said, his grin widening as he gave the Beholder Sage a gentle squeeze, making it squirm nervously. He dropped the polite facade entirely, his tone becoming sharp and demanding. "Hey now, you shouldn't be yelling at me when you're the one asking for a favor." He held the Beholder up, a clear and undeniable threat. "If you keep this up, I'll just get rid of it." Gono. The mighty ogre appeared instantly, his presence a silent promise of destruction, while the goblin mage Kiruk looked on, ready to act. His gamble paid off spectacularly. A new system window materialized, a proposal directly from the divine being. Hanol's eyes widened at the astonishing reward, ownership of the Beholder Sage. He had only intended to bluff, but the constellation had just offered him a priceless, tameable named monster. That's awesome, he thought, his mind already spinning with possibilities. A greedy glint appeared in his eyes. This was a negotiation, and he was in the power position. "If I play my cards right, I can milk even more rewards out of this," he schemed. Tossing the Beholder Sage into the air, he addressed the heavens. "Now I can finally feel your sincerity. Understood, I'll take good care of this little guy." The system responded immediately, The gardener of the mother goddess let out a sigh of relief, urging him to begin. Hanol, however, wasn't finished. I will, he replied, holding up a hand to stall. But mind if I ask a question first? After receiving a nod of consent from the system, he posed the obvious query. Why go out of your way to find a guardian? Someone with your abilities should easily be able to stop these monsters, right? The system conveyed the constellation's answer. It had originally held off the monsters with the Beholder Sage's help, but had now reached its limit and required a proxy. The explanation made Hanol's expression turn serious. If even a godlike being was struggling, the monsters they were about to face must be of an unbelievable, world-ending caliber. But then, a follow-up message appeared that left him utterly dumbfounded. The gardener of the mother goddess says that's not it. They just can't do it anymore, because defense games are boring. Hanol's jaw dropped. WH1. Boring. The sheer absurdity of a divine being abandoning its sacred duty out of simple ennui was almost too much to process. The constellation snorted, stating its boredom as a simple fact. Hanol, however, just laughed, a confident, calculating smile returning to his face. That's just because you don't understand the true charm of defense games yet, he declared, striking an expert pose. This is perfect. If you just sneak me a few extra rewards, I'll teach you the tricks of the trade as I clear the mission. The gardener casually dismissed his offer, stating they didn't need his help. Hanol's smile turned into a scowl. Without hesitation, he grabbed the Beholder Sage and gave it a hard squeeze. Gono, Hiruk, he yelled, his intent unmistakable. The threat was brutally effective. The system immediately chimed in. The gardener of the mother goddess nods vigorously. With the deal struck, the first wave of the trial began. It was not a battle, it was a massacre. Vicious, plant-like Zyras and hulking, wolf-like beasts swarmed the field, only to be met by Hanol's own summoned forces. His loyal monsters tore through the enemy ranks with brutal efficiency, leaving a trail of blood and ichor in their wake. Hanol looked to the sky with a smug grin, addressing his divine student. Well, did you watch closely, Constellation? If you just do it like this, it'll be much easier to defend from now on. His display of strategic dominance was a clear and pointed lesson. He stood with his powerful summons, ready for the next challenge. Shall we move on to the next wave then? The system announced the 10th monster wave, a fearsome combination of Cerberuses, golden bees, a golden bee queen, and iron golems. A formidable force for any normal hunter. Hanol held the Beholder Sage, looking up at the sky with a challenging smirk. How would you handle this, Constellation? He asked, testing the divine being's tactical sense. The gardener's response was a non-committal shrug, seemingly scratching its belly in boredom. Hanol's eye twitched in annoyance. You don't have any intention of taking this seriously, do you? He muttered. Then, a new idea struck him, a perfect insult to provoke the lazy deity. Hey Constellation, is it not that you find defense games annoying, but that you just suck at them? The taunt struck a nerve. The gardener flared with indignation, insisting it could handle something so simple. A moment later, a detailed tactical layout plan materialized before Hanol. A small smile played on his lips. Looks like you're finally motivated to do this properly, he mused, the light from the system interface reflecting in his eyes. He examined the plan with a critical eye, quickly identifying a fatal flaw. You're just going to cram 20 Zyras at the entrance? Are you serious? When the Constellation confirmed its strategy, Hanol didn't hold back his professional opinion, deciding to provoke the god a little more. That tactic is absolutely hopeless. The gardener insisted its plan was more than sufficient, but Hanol shook his head, launching into a lecture. No, the attack power might be there, but Zyra's movements are way too sluggish to be effective alone. He gestured towards the beautiful, blossoming Ari trees. That's why you absolutely must place the Ari Tree of Charm alongside them. It immobilizes enemies, covering for Zyra's slow speed. And that's not all, he continued, his tone that of a seasoned professor schooling a novice. The Golden Bee Queen is immune to charm, and the Iron Golems are immune to magic, meaning the World Tree's wall won't stop them. He locked his gaze on the sky. So what should we use to tie down those two so that Zyra can win? The The constellation could only respond with a curious silence. Hanal declared confidently, "This is the answer." He reached down and plucked a small, unassuming pea weed, producing a single, shiny pellet from its pod. "The bullets fired by the pea weeds have a sticky adhesiveness," he explained, stretching the gooey substance between his fingers. "We're going to utilize that." The gardener was unimpressed, pointing out that the adhesiveness wasn't very strong. True, one or two might not be a big deal. Hanal conceded with a clever grin. But what if hundreds or thousands of them stick to you? The constellation's interest was finally piqued. "Watch this," Hanal commanded. "See how these pea bullets stop the monsters in their tracks." On his command, a storm of sticky pellets rained down upon the 10th wave. The Golden Bee Queen and Iron Golems were instantly bogged down, their special immunities rendered useless against the sheer volume of adhesive goo. Helplessly ensnared, they were torn to shreds by the waiting Xyrus. "Do you see?" Hanal shouted over the carnage. "This is the true thrill of defense games." The battlefield fell silent, littered with the remains of the once formidable wave. Hanal stood triumphant, a master strategist admiring his work. "Shall we move on to the next wave then?" he asked coolly. A system message confirmed his success. The gardener of the Mother Goddess watches with great interest. Time passed, and the 25th monster wave was upon them. A giant draken, a wolf pack, and a swarm of ghouls. It was a classic mix of one large boss and multiple smaller mobs. Hanal turned to his divine student, testing its progress. This time it's one large monster and 11 smaller ones of different types. "How would you handle this, Constellation?" After a moment of careful consideration, the gardener offered its opinion, projecting a complex tactical map into the air. Hanal examined it closely. "Oh ho, you placed them to herd the monsters into the center?" he noted, impressed. "You plan to stop their movements with charms and pea bullets, and then take them all out at once." The constellation confirmed, and Hanal nodded in approval. "Good," Hanal said with a genuine smile of a proud teacher. "This time, I'll set up one side of the passage exactly as you suggested." He raised his hand, pointing decisively as his summoned creatures moved into their new positions. In response, the system displayed a message from the gardener, a resounding thumbs up. What followed was a masterclass in cooperative defense. Wave 25 fell, then Wave 57, and then Wave 62. System notifications announcing their success stacked one after another, a testament to their flawless teamwork. The student had learned quickly, and the teacher guided them to victory after victory against the endless hordes. Then, a new kind of notification appeared, one that would change everything. A tremendous change has occurred in the gardener's state of mind. Readjusting the mission, Hanal watched in shock as the objective changed from defense to coaching. The constellation had become so engrossed in the game that it now willingly volunteered to become the guardian itself. A wicked grin spread across Hanal's face. "Perfect," he hissed, rubbing his hands together. "Then from here on out, I'll teach you all of my defense game know-how." And so, he spent the next half-day diligently carrying out his new coaching mission, reviewing the constellation's increasingly complex strategies and offering his expert advice. Man, Constellation," he'd say, critiquing the layout for Wave 74. "For something like that Chicken King, it's better to just roast it whole." He would point out minor flaws, like inefficient use of the Ari tree's charm. Despite his constant nitpicking, he was secretly impressed. As they reached Wave 88, he stroked his chin thoughtfully. Still, that's not too shabby. After successfully defending against the 99th wave, Hanal took a rare moment to rest, letting out a satisfied sigh. He sat with Gono and Kiruk, watching the constellation's defenses prepare for the final round. "Wow, our constellation is doing so well now," he praised aloud. The gardener of the Mother Goddess practically beamed, shrugging with immense satisfaction. Kiruk, the goblin mage chirped in agreement. "Oh, sovereign of all, even Gono and I can tell their skills have improved immensely. I think the constellation can easily finish this alone." He was abruptly cut off by a blaring system alert that pulsed with ominous energy. "The 100th monster wave is arriving soon." The entire dimension began to shake violently, the ground cracking under an immense pressure that dwarfed everything before it. A shadow fell over the battlefield as a titanic figure stomped into view. It was a gargantuan, purple-furred beast resembling a mammoth, its eyes glowing with a malevolent red light. The sheer power radiating from it stunned Hanol and his summons into silence. The system announced the final challenge, its crimson text a stark and terrifying warning. The legendary beast roared, its voice shaking the very heavens. In a flash of panic, the gardener of the mother goddess began to hurriedly rearrange the defenses, its newfound confidence shattered by the appearance of a true world-ending threat. "Constellation, it's all right," Hanol said, his voice a pillar of calm amidst the chaos. The gardener paused, its frantic energy ceasing as it looked to him for guidance. "You've grown more than enough, and you've adapted incredibly fast." He turned to face the behemoth, his expression grim and resolute. "However, that one looks a bit too tough to handle with just the garden's power alone." A determined fire ignited in Hanol's eyes, his fighting spirit surging forth. "So, we will show you how to take it down directly." With a final command, he, Gono, and Kiruk launched themselves from their perch, soaring through the air towards the colossal behemoth. As they descended upon the beast, Hanol's voice echoed through the dimension, a final declaration to his student. "This is your final lesson, so please watch closely." At the gardener's command, the very ground twisted into a cage of immense, living vines. They surged upwards, wrapping around the behemoth's colossal legs and torso in a desperate attempt to restrain the beast. With a thunderous roar, the behemoth strained against its bonds, the ground shaking with the raw, untamed power of the 100th wave's final guardian. Seeing the monster's feet ensnared, Hanol's eyes flashed with predatory opportunity. A confident smirk spread across his face as he seized the momentary advantage. "Nice, his feet are tied up," he thought, his mind already calculating the next move. This is our chance while his movement is stopped, even if it's just for a moment. Hanol's brief moment of confidence was shattered by a deafening, reality-shaking roar. The behemoth's eye flared with crimson rage, and with a flex of pure, unadulterated might, it began to tear the thick vines asunder. The creature was far more powerful than the gardener's simple restraints could ever hope to contain. Before Hanol could issue his command to charge, a horrifying sight stopped him cold. The behemoth's thick, matted fur began to writhe and crawl, as if infested by some unseen terror. A moment later, a vile, crimson swarm erupted from its body, a living cloud of screeching, winged monstrosities that blotted out the air. His sage's eye instantly provided the grim details. They were blood fleas, parasitic creatures with a skill for blood-sucking. Individually weak, but their numbers were a plague. "Monsters are bursting out from inside his fur," Hanol exclaimed, his strategic advantage evaporating in an instant. The parasitic swarm descended upon him with terrifying speed. Caught flat-footed, Hanol realized his mistake too late. "Whoa, I can't dodge in this state," he panicked. A wave of dread washed over him as the chittering horde closed in, their needle-like proboscises aimed directly for him. Just as the first wave of fleas was about to strike, a massive shadow fell over Hanol. Odolf, his loyal ogre servant, threw himself in front of his master, his body taking the brunt of the initial assault. Landing heavily, Odolf brushed the pests aside, his voice a deep rumble of concern. "Phew, that was a close call." Kiruk moved to cover their flank, his daggers a blur. Odolf turned to his master, his expression serious. "Are you all right, King of Kings?" Hanol caught his breath, steadying his nerves. "I'm fine, thanks," he replied, trying to project a calm he didn't feel. "Fortunately, they're not that threatening." His words turned to ash in his mouth. The swarm was endless, a nightmarish river of red that filled the entire chamber. He grit his teeth, the true scale of the threat crashing down on him. "Darn it," he muttered, retracting his earlier assessment. "They're very threatening." As Hanol and Kiruk dodged the relentless onslaught, Odolf took the offensive. "My monarch, it's dangerous," he roared, swinging his massive club. He carved a path through the swarm, each blow atomizing dozens of the blood-sucking pests. But for every one he destroyed, 100 more took its place. Kiruk moved like a phantom, his blades weaving a tapestry of destruction through the air. Flashing blue energy trailed his every strike as he danced around the swarm, providing crucial support. Together, he and Odolf formed a desperate, embattled bastion around their monarch, fighting against an overwhelming tide. Hanol's mind raced, analyzing the chaotic battle. "This is bad," he concluded, his expression grim. The fleas themselves weren't strong, but their sheer numbers were an insurmountable obstacle. There were far too many for just the 3 of them to handle. He needed another solution, and fast. Suddenly, a golden system notification chimed in his mind. A jolt of inspiration struck Hanol. The deferred payment, the extra money he'd almost forgotten about. It had arrived at the perfect moment. A cunning smile lit his face. "It's time to summon this guy." Without hesitation, Hanol activated Deal with the Monarch. A brilliant pillar of azure light erupted from the ground as he poured his newfound resources into the summoning. He was calling upon the very monster whose soulstone had just funded this desperate gambit. With the magic of the named monster, Zen Karuk, he declared, "I'll wipe out these blood fleas in one sweep." The Lizardman High Priest, Zen Karuk, materialized in a flash of crackling energy, looking utterly bewildered. "Kekai, what? Where am I?" he shrieked. Hanol didn't give him time to recover. "Hey, High Priest, hurry up and do that thing. You know, that one. Use that water spray you used back then, you fool." The urgent command finally broke through Zen Karuk's confusion. Realization dawned in his reptilian eyes. Raising his skull-topped staff, he channeled his power and invoked a torrent of holy magic. Activating Tears of the Ancient God, a massive wave of purifying water surged forth, crashing into the blood flea swarm. The sacred deluge washed over the battlefield, the holy water dissolving the parasitic monsters on contact. Hanol watched with satisfaction as the crimson tide was replaced by a cleansing blue. "Nice," he exclaimed. It was weaker than the attack he'd faced at the lake, but it was more than enough power to sweep away these fleas. "Zen Karuk, finish them off," Hanol commanded. Eager to please his new master, the Lizardman unleashed a final, devastating torrent of water, eradicating the last remnants of the swarm. Hanol gave him a proud thumbs up, causing Zen Karuk to blush. "This is a piece of cake, sir." With the parasitic swarm annihilated, their full attention returned to the primary threat. "Now, all that's left is," Hanol began, his eyes locking onto the furious behemoth. The beast let out an enraged bellow. Wasting no time, Hanol shouted his next order. "Odolf." The ogre snapped to attention. "Yes, my monarch." "Throw Gono at the behemoth's head," Hanol commanded. Odolf and Kiruk stared back, utterly baffled. "I'm sorry, what?" Odolf stammered, while Kiruk looked on in disbelief. "There's no time to explain the plan," Hanol yelled over the behemoth's roars. "Trust me and just throw him." Odolf's loyalty overrode his confusion. He gently but firmly scooped up the goblin assassin. "My apologies, goblin friend," he rumbled. With a mighty heave, he launched Kiruk through the air like a living cannonball, sending him hurtling directly towards the behemoth's massive head. As Kiruk soared, Hanol bellowed a series of rapid-fire commands. "Gono now, accelerate." Kiruk, in response to the unseen Gono's buff, a surge of energy propelled Kiruk forward. The goblin then activated his own skill, Raven's Wings, sprouting ethereal wings to increase his velocity even further. This was Hanol's plan, to use stacked acceleration to turn Kiruk's small frame into a piercing projectile, powerful enough to break the behemoth's tough hide. But the plan wasn't complete. "Zen Karuk," Hanol shouted. "Surround Kiruk with your water spray." The Lizardman complied instantly, activating a new form of his skill, Tears of the Ancient God, Barrier. A swirling vortex of high-pressure water enveloped the flying goblin, creating a protective, armor-piercing shell. Now a hydrokinetic, goblin-guided missile, Kiruk slammed headfirst into the behemoth. The beast let out a final, agonized shriek as the combined forces of the throw, the acceleration buffs, and the water barrier created an impact of catastrophic proportions. A brilliant explosion of blue light and raw power signaled the end of the final wave. As the light faded, the colossal form of the behemoth was gone, leaving only silence. A system message chimed, its tone triumphant. Hanol surveyed his victorious but exhausted team. He smiled, singling out the one whose power made the final blow possible. Go no nice. A final, brilliant column of light descended from the heavens, depositing a magnificent, golden greatsword before them. A system window announced the true prize. Hanol stared in astonishment. What's this? This sword is the reward. He reached out, his hand closing around the hilt of the legendary weapon. The sword's information appeared before him. Its description was as grand as it was cryptic. An emperor is one who encompasses all. Therefore, this sword, bearing the emperor's name, can contain all things. A new skill, Vestige Copy, became available for use. Contain all things? What does that mean? Hanol wondered aloud. He immediately checked the skill's details. The answer was astounding. By inserting a monster's summoning orb into the hilt, the sword could copy that monster's highest stat and one of its skills, though the monster couldn't be summoned while active. Hanol's eyes widened in realization. So the rank and effects changed depending on which or by insert. That's why the rank was a question mark. Before he could fully process the potential of his new weapon, another message appeared, this one directly from his divine student. Hanol blinked. An additional reward? Then he remembered his earlier bargain with the fledgling constellation. Ah, that's right. A slow, ambitious smile spread across Hanol's face as he considered the possibilities. A reward from a constellation was no mere item or skill. It was an opportunity for something far greater. He knew exactly what he wanted. Turning to the beholder sage, the gardener's avatar, he made his demand clear. Great constellation, please share your authority with me. He presented the hilt of the emperor's vestige, its empty slot facing the divine being. It was not just a request, but an offering, a vessel for the constellation's power. The air grew heavy, crackling with immense energy as the gardener of the mother goddess considered the mortal's unprecedented, audacious proposal.